Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to what may be a short-lived Screenwriting Show episode. We have been having all sorts of internet problems here today where the internet will just cut out for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then it'll just pop back on, and it's been on and off and on and off all day today. So if we get cut off, then I will continue to stay here to see if and when maybe it comes back on. But this may be a slightly frustrating endeavor, so we're just going to try to make the best of it. Looking at the number of people here, we have a light show today, which is possibly okay. Looks like we got about 8 people online. Hello, everybody. The idea for the show originally was going to be the writing style episode, the secret language of screenplays. The challenge that I've had from last week and the week before is still not having a sufficient crew to be able to help me put these episodes together. So what I've actually decided to do is, rather than do a sort of structured deep dive, or rather than sort of each week say, hey, we have to push it back another week, what I'm going to do is just say, in about a month, we're hoping to have all of our first sort of month's worth of shows mapped out, so that about a month from now, we can start digging into the actual episodes. So this week and next week and the week after probably, excuse me, we're going to do kind of what we've been doing all along, which is an open conversation about all things screenwriting. I do want to sort of keep it on loose target, so that at least when you dig through all these extraordinarily long and long-winded episodes, when you look through the list on the YouTube channel, there's some sort of focus or nugget that we can sort of burrow into for that episode. So what I want to talk about today, or what I'd like to, the loose theme of it today would be inspiration and motivation. Writing while you're inspired, writing while you're not inspired, how to find motivation, how to keep motivation, how to keep pushing forward. I know one of the biggest challenges that I see with writers going through the fast screenplay process is that somewhere along the way, something will happen in life and they'll just sort of drop off. They'll get frustrated, life gets in the way, then coming back and trying to find that momentum to sort of keep picking up and moving forward and just continuing on with it is a little bit of a challenge. One of the reasons it's such a challenge is, screenwriting isn't one of those things where there's a very clear end goal. I mean, there's a clear end goal, but there's not a clear sort of target that you're working toward. You're trying to create this screenplay, this story, this imaginative experience that you're going to put the audience through. And what does it look like when it's done? Yeah, it's a screenplay. Yeah, it's a production-ready screenplay, or a viable screenplay, or something that people are going to like, that you're going to go knock on doors with. But it's so amorphous. There's not a very specific, hey, I know when it's finished. Because maybe you finished it to the best of your ability, then you learn some new tip or technique or trick or insight that we talk about maybe on a show like this, and suddenly you go, oh, geez, I better go fix that up again. And it's like this moving set of goalposts. So I think the very nature of that is partly what keeps the motivation from getting full and sustained along the way, because there's no definitive end result. At least if you were going to write a book, for example, you go, well, I'm going to map out the number of chapters I'm going to write X number of words, I'm going to get to this point, and once I'm done, I can send it off to somebody to format the book and put it all together, and then it's done, right? It's there. Sales are another issue, but at least I've done that part of it. With the screenplay, it really is something that can keep moving. And I think that's possibly deflating. And so one of the things I see with writers, especially newer writers, is that you get very inspired by some idea for a movie or some scene that some movie you watched inspired within you, and you sit down and start blasting out that project and not really thinking about the process of it all, not thinking about going through and refining that script once you've written it, or think about, what is the trajectory that you're going to take? I'm inspired. You get some screenwriting software, you sit down, you start working on it. I think that kind of a thing, that kind of inspiration-driven screenwriting can really burn you out kind of quickly and can frustrate you because you feel good in the moment that you're inspired, but then all those days that you're not inspired, or when you read your work back and there's nothing terribly inspiring about what you wrote, I think that can be very deflating. And then you're forever sort of waiting for that inspiration to come back and kick in again and reignite. And it can create this false sense that you really only can write when you're inspired. So if you don't feel inspired, then you don't feel the urge to write. And what I've learned over the years is that that's just not how it works. In fact, you probably will only actually be inspired maybe 5% of the time that you're working on your screenplay or working on your story design. If you really think of writing or this kind of a creative endeavor as something to do, something to achieve, something to work on it, like a project, really, then you can start to break it down and go through it piece by piece. One of the things we try to do in Fast Screenplay is the system is set up and designed in such a way that you immerse into each daily step. And the reason for that is so that by immersing into the step, you don't have to worry about the end goal. You don't have to worry about the bigger picture stuff, because things like improving your work, rewriting it, polishing it, all of that stuff, there's a time for that. There's a place for that. That will come if instead you just immerse into today's action, today's activity, today's insight, today's skill building exercise. If you just immerse fully into that, well, then all you have to do is, if you lose motivation, if you lose your inspiration, if you lose your place because you had to put it all on hold for 3 weeks or a month or a year, you can come back. You don't have to worry about fixing it or improving it or getting it to this magical, beautiful, inspired place. You can simply immerse into the next step based on wherever you are at that point. And if you immerse into that next step, and then the next day you immerse into the next step, and the next day you immerse into the next step, well, what's going to happen is you will make your way through that process. And at the end, you'll have a story that may feel a little disjointed because there's that big gap in the middle, but because of the way it's designed, those steps will help you see the big picture whole. And then we start working on that in the writing phase and in the rewriting phase and in the polishing phase. So it is designed to counteract that frustration or that gap that happens when you lose your inspiration or your motivation. But if you aren't a part of Fast, or if you're doing it through your own, if you're writing on your own time in your own way, the takeaway from that is that the way to keep going, the way to overcome the hurdles that happen in life, is to simply immerse fully into the next step of your journey as you're going through that process. So the way I like to think of it all is, rather than writing when you're inspired, rather than being driven by that inspiration, focus on what is my motivation. What is motivating me to get where I'm trying to go? Why do I want to get to that place? What is it that I'm reaching for? And how can I go about getting that thing? So if you're driven by that motivation, then on those days when you just don't really feel like it, I don't want to do any writing today. I don't want to sit down and map out my story plan or dive deeper into this character development dossier that I'm putting together. If you don't want to do that kind of work that day, you can look back at your why. You can look back at that motivation, that fuel source that you identified for yourself at the beginning of the journey. If you really start with, what do I want? Why do I want it? What's my goal here? And you write that, you capture that, you harness that idea, then you will have that in the moment at the beginning of that journey. That's what inspires you. So that will be the thing that will get you excited about continuing to move forward. By capturing that later on down the road, when you lose that steam and you lose that momentum, well, you can go back and look at that thing that you had captured. Now, it might not tickle you in the same way. It might not inspire you and give you the same sense of fuel or determination or passion or direction. But when you see why you originally started to do it, that then can trigger what's changed or how you might want to do it instead. You may look at it and go, well, that was a naive goal that initially kicked me off on this journey. But you know what? If I look at it a different way, or I think about this other aspect of life that now has happened since, and I sort of tap back into that initial source of fuel, that source of motivation, well, then you can adjust and adapt that why. You can adapt that purpose, and then it'll kick back in and reignite that fuel to keep you moving forward again. So what I would like to know from you guys today is what motivates you or what inspires you. Do you find that you write out of inspiration when you write? Do you find it easier to write when you're inspired to write? Will you not write if you're not feeling inspired to write? Will you just sort of find excuses if you're not feeling it? Or what is your strategy? How do you go about tapping into whatever it is that drives you? If we can go through some of that, we'll talk about some of your ideas. I'll answer questions. We'll dig into whatever comes up on these conversations. But I'm going to keep trying to bring it back to, or I'm going to keep trying to weave it back together with this idea of motivation and inspiration. Because I think if we can crack that one, if we can really nail the driver, in fast, the beginning of the focus phase, the beginning of the story development phase starts with what is your hidden motivation? What is it that you're unaware of that's actually driving your want to write this story, to create this thing? Because when you can figure out what your deep hidden motivation is, that will very often tap into the kinds of stories, the kinds of themes, the purpose for being here. And by doing that at the beginning, we really do give ourselves it's like a rocket fuel. I mean, it sounds cheesy and it sounds over the top, but there's this thing that I talk about at the beginning of the focus phase, which is the butterflies. There's this sense that we have in the pit of our stomach when we really tap into something we're excited about. And it's an anxiety combined with an excitement. So it's like wow. It's like it just sort of overtakes us. And if we can tap into that thing, then we know we're on the right track. We're not going to be able to hold on to that thing throughout. So we really need to understand what it is, what's driving us, and how are we going to get back to that. So let's look through some of the comments. Let me say hi to everybody, and we'll see what we've got. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you're coming here a little bit late, it looks like we're up to about 18 people on here. I think I saw we were up to 21 at one point. If you missed the very beginning, I have had spotty internet all day long. It keeps cutting out, coming back in, cutting out, coming back in. So there's every possibility, I would say possibly even likelihood, that at some point this is going to cut out today. And if it does, I will stay here and wait until I can get back on. I will understand if you decide it's too frustrating, but I will keep trying and sort of be here through our normal time. So Hunter says, Jeff, how do you handle rejection when a movie studio or TV studio decide they are not interested in your project? If you're at that point, you're probably not too worried about it, because if you're at the point where movie studios or TV production companies are saying no to your project, then In theory, you've already been through all the rest of it. You've already created something extraordinary, tested it, ensured that it lands the way you want it to land. Remember, from my perspective, you never send work out into the world until you have tested that thing, until you know for a fact that it lands with the reader the way you want it to land with the reader. It has precisely the effect and impact that you want it to have. So that when you start to go out and reach out to producers and production companies, you know that your project is right for them. You're not just going to be doing the scattergun approach. You're going to be approaching those producers or production companies or movie studios or whomever that you know are right for this project, and this project is right for them. So when you get rejected by them, if you do, and they actually read your work because you've actually hooked them and drawn them in, and your work did not exceed their expectations, and therefore they are not interested in your project. And by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, not you, Hunter, because I know you've been here, but if you're new to this, you're watching me for the first time here, you don't know what I'm talking about here. I have explained the promise progression and how to hook a producer and how to draw them in and how to sell your stuff in other episodes of this show. So I'm going to sort of do some shorthand. We'll catch up as we go along, especially if you have any questions about any of this stuff. But if you have already done all that testing and that vetting and you send it out and you still get them saying no, well, all it is a matter of alignment. It's simply a matter that this production company, producer, whomever it is you've sent it out to, is not aligned with you and what you're doing at this point in time. Your job at that point is to figure out why. Where was your gap? You sent it to them because you believed it was perfect for them and they were perfect for it. Now they've said no, assuming they've read it and you're actually getting a rejection and not just we don't accept unsolicited projects. If you actually get knocked back, then really the question becomes, how did I go wrong? What did I miss? Did I miscalculate who they are or where they're at? Is there possibly something in their current work slate that I don't know about? Try to figure out where that discrepancy is, and then we can address that discrepancy with the next project or with the next whatever it might be. So hopefully that makes sense. Hunter also asked, can watching movies help inspire ideas for your own screenplay? Yes, of course, absolutely. We are inspired by everything we experience, everything we watch, everything we dream, every interaction we have. Your inspiration should be coming from anywhere. So keep your eyes open. You don't ever want to plagiarize somebody. You don't ever want to say, hey, that's a great scene for a movie. I'm going to have the same scene in my movie. If you do see a scene that you like and you go, hey, you know what I could do is take that scene, but add this element or add that element or change it around in this way. Or my characters going through that kind of a thing would probably have this kind of an outcome. Let the things that you watch and like and enjoy inspire your own creativity for how you can apply it to your unique situation. So there should never be any need ever for us to copy someone else's work or to take someone else's ideas. Take someone else's idea, mash it up, you put a different element on it. If you watch a scene in a movie and somebody has a great line of dialogue, you could, or let's say, not dialogue, let's say something like the scene itself. Let's say there's a great scene, super tense, two characters sort of finally come together to have a confrontation, and you think that would be fantastic. What spin can you put on it for your own project? If you simply spin things a little bit, maybe I could set this in some unique environment, or I could have this person have some knowledge about this person that they don't know they have. That would change the dynamics of that scene. And you take the raw mechanics of the thing that you like, but you add your own spin, you add your own creativity to it. Suddenly it becomes a different scene. You're not taking someone else's thing. You're letting that inspire the projects that you write. So that can come from movies, that can come from real life experience, that can come from anywhere. So hopefully that makes sense. Tobias, hi. Brad, hi. Let's see. Asking each other how you're doing. Good. I love it. George, sorry, I just gotta throw this up here. This is a superb channel that has really helped me. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Fast Screenplay. Love from the UK. I appreciate that, George. Look, it's it can feel a little lonely. It can feel a little like I'm talking to the wind and nobody really cares about what's going on here. So it's nice to know that that is that people do appreciate it from time to time. So I thank you. Keep in mind also not to do a little plug or anything this early in the game, but if you like what I do here, this is just we're having conversations and I'm trying to inspire you and all that for sort of a good solid understanding of the entirety of the screenwriting thing. Check out the weekend screenwriting workshop, where in 12 hours, I sort of cover all the major aspects of screenwriting, so that at the beginning of the weekend, you may have all these gaps in your knowledge. By the end of the weekend, you're clear on what the goal is, what the objective is. You've done a number of exercises that help you see clearly where you're trying to go. And it really is a fantastic workshop. If you do want to go all the way through the process, I got another one, which is, there we go, somewhere here. There we go. Fast Screenplay. Did the other one show up on the other one? I don't even know now. So Fast Screenplay is the complete process whereby I guide you step by step through the entire thing, from the very beginning to the very end, from literally before you even have an idea for a movie, even if you don't even know what a screenplay looks like, from the very, very beginning, help you pre-align your imagination so that the kinds of stories that you come up with are already in sync with those producers and production companies. And then we go through the story development process, where we grow what you're passionate about and the ideas that you have organically into a compelling story. We then write that. We then go through the world's most comprehensive rewrite process. We then polish that to make sure it's a page-turner reader experience. We then test it to make sure that it lands the way you want it to land, so that you know for a fact that it's landing effectively with the audience that you're trying to connect with. And then we show you how to find and connect with the producer that's perfect for your project, how to hook them, how to exceed their expectations so that they really want to come to you. And that's how you're going to go ahead and sell your work. So anyway, quick little, I usually do that at the end, but most people aren't still here at the end. So, so there's a little one there. Let's see. Okay. Hunter Brad Sola. Hi. So last time I asked you about the difference between writing books and writing screenplays. Well, I have a new question in mind. Is there a difference between screenwriting and writing for theater? Hi, Sola. Sola is a 14-year-old writer who's exploring screenwriting and all that for the first time. So hello and welcome. Yes, there's a pretty big difference. So screenwriting is writing for the cinema screen. We're going to include in the screenplay only what we can see and hear on the screen. So you're only writing the imagery that we see. In movies, because it's a visual medium, we want to make use of the visual nature of the medium. So we frequently want to move locations. We want to have motion within the stories somehow, so that we really make the best use of the medium itself. For stage, the stage plays are all about it's all about the dialogue largely, and all about that static location and transporting us somewhere within that static location. So the way a play is written is it's the character's name and their dialogue, the character's name and their dialogue, the character's name and their dialogue. The screenplay has the action, it's formatted differently. And so for stage, for theater, you're pretty much not going to have anything else aside from the dialogue for the most part. There's some basic stage direction, so-and-so crosses to stage left or that kind of a thing. But there's not a whole lot of that. It's almost entirely done through dialogue, usually on a play. So the thing to remember with all different kinds of writing, whether it's for TV, whether it's for film, whether it's for stage, whether it's for novels, whether it's for short stories, short films, any kind of writing that you do, you really want to always keep in mind the medium that you're writing for. So in a movie theater, you're going to have the sound design, you're going to have the music design. It's about being transported into this other place. Through the nature of film editing, we can focus on what the movie can focus on, what we want the audience to see and experience. And so we design those things. The director, the editors, the actors even, we're designing those moments to take the audience on a very specific experience. If you think about, let's say my phone rings, right? So my phone rings, I pick it up. If we cut into something that I see on the screen and we cut back to me, and I have the same look on my face, that may not mean anything. But if I have a shocked look on my face, then even if you didn't see or make out what was on the screen, just by seeing that shocked look on my face, we can possibly heighten the surprise or the tension or that kind of a moment that we're witnessing. On a stage, it's actors, and the actors are there talking, and they're going to create that immersive experience simply through what they're saying, where they're positioned on the stage, moving forward, moving back. Are they talking to the audience? Are they simply talking to each other? Are they whispering aloud as if they're thinking? Those are the techniques that you use within that type of writing. So we always want to write for this specific experience of the medium that we're delivering. A person who's reading a novel is going to immerse into the world as it's described. So we're probably going to want to use a lot more descriptive language. We're going to want to use all the senses describing the smell. So we're thinking about the smell. You're not going to include the smell on a movie or probably on a play, because that's not really a part of that experience. A character might smell something, or another character might describe a smell or something like that. But we, the audience, are not being given that piece of information, so that in our imagination, we're sensing that smell in the novel as we're reading through the rest of the story. Does that make sense? So yes, there are differences. You can tell stories in different media. You can tell the same story in different media in somewhat different ways to make use of the different media. So depending on the story ideas that you have, it's probably best to figure out which one you think best serves that story idea that you have. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that answers the question. Let's see. Hello. So it says, by the way, I'm staying awake until 2 every Thursday just to watch your show. Fantastic. You know, you can watch a replay as well. It's great to have you here, and I don't want to have fewer people live on the show. Looks like we got about 25 people here now. So more people the more the merrier, I always say. But you can watch more. What's that? Fantastic. I think we got a super chat here from Boston Joe and from Tobias. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that. I will highlight those when I get to them in the chat. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Tobias says, have you seen Goodfellas? Yes. Have seen Goodfellas. Goodfellas is fantastic. A bit of a Goodfellas conversation going on. My motivation comes from movie trailers. Tuna Cat, I don't think I've seen you before. Welcome. Nice to have you on our little weekly adventure here. My motivation comes from movie trailers. I often write to dramatic music, and I find it always helps. There's actually a step that we do in the first phase, in the setup phase of Fast Screenplay, where we look at movie trailers. We specifically look at movie trailers to figure out what they're promising. I think one of the big frustrations a lot of people have with movie trailers these days, they give away too much of the movie, right? What a movie trailer should do, what it ideally should do, is it should give you an urge, a desire to see this movie, because the concept or the premise of the thing, or the actors, or the way it's shot, or something draws you in and makes you think this is going to be cool. Like, I'm interested in this story. Or maybe it's just a simple drama and you go, oh, I'm in the mood for that kind of a thing, right? The best trailers, and what I hope we will get back to at some point, and if we ever start making movies, we're going to be focused on those trailers in a big way, because I want to show how you make a promise and then you exceed the expectations that the audience has for that. But if you can basically lay out a premise in a trailer, and then the movie itself exceeds the expectations of the audience from it. So I think I'm going in and it's going to be this great action ride, but then it turns into this like action movie with a twist that made me cry, that was like way beyond what I would have expected from the trailer. Then you're going to have a happy audience experience. The big problem we have today with trailers at the moment, and for the last X number of years, for a long time actually, is they say too much in the trailer. So we go to the movie expecting there to be bigger surprises, something that's going to take us beyond those what was promised in the trailer. And then no, really the best parts were all in the trailer. So it's a letdown. We get deflated from it. So yeah, I think trailers are fantastic. I've always been a big fan of trailers, and I'm a huge, I think you can certainly get a lot of value out of them. I think you can certainly get a lot of inspiration out of them. You know, there's a question that often comes up about, you know, what if I see the movie that I'm working on as a trailer? This happens all the time. You spend a couple months working on a script or a story, you're figuring it all out, and then you go on, you see a trailer online, and it's literally for the movie you're working on, but it's not your movie. Somebody else beat you to the punch. They took that idea and ran with it. One of the things that I'm a big believer is that we can tell if I gave a premise for a movie to you guys right now, and I actually thought about this earlier today. What if I give you guys a premise and then we all go out and write our one-pager for that same premise, right? You would instantly see how everyone has a different take on it, and it's potentially a very different movie depending on who's the one that's putting that together. So just because you see a trailer or something or you hear about a movie that's similar to what you're doing, if it's exactly similar, if it is basically the same movie, you can still continue working on your own movie. The key then is going to be to understand that, well, that movie is now a part of film history, right? So that's out there. That's in the zeitgeist. That is a movie people will know about potentially, or your audience, if you're making the same kind of story, would probably want to go see that movie, right? So how can you then take the story that you're already working on and add another layer to it? Take it to the next level. Look at the same basic premise from a different angle. So many writers get frustrated. They stole my idea, or well, I can't do that now, so I've got no other ideas in me. So they sort of storm off upset. And I think that's a limit of imagination, really, because in theory, you're a writer. In theory, you have lots of ideas. So in theory, you should be able to find a new angle or tell another layer to the story, or bring something new to it. And if you really can't, and if you really it's the story you wanted to tell, but you kind of wanted to tell it in your own way, I would say continue to write it, finish it, shelve it, and then come back in about 10 years and there will be a market for it again, because these things are cyclical. You see stories today that are kind of similar to movies that were made 10 years or 15 or 20 years ago. And it's not that we're running out of ideas or anything like that. There's get a lot of complaints about that kind of thing, but it's really more that that ideas and themes will keep recurring. So, the human experience is the human experience. We have the same kind of experience as we sort of go through this journey. So it makes sense that each generation is going to have their own version of the fill in the blank, whatever it is, story, right? And so I wouldn't necessarily be afraid of that. I would lean into it. I know I'm not really talking to anybody specific because that's not what that comment was about, but I realize I always find common themes to stuff that's come up along the way before. Okay, Shane says, I find that as I get older, I feel less motivated, less inspired, and less motivated. Because of that, my motivation has now become, I need to do this before I die. Yeah, fair enough, if that's what it has to be. So here's the thing. I know you're joking, and I know that's partially in jest. I know there is also partially some loss of that motivation. Look, when I started this journey and trying to build an indie film studio, when I first started teaching writers, well, I was 27, maybe something like that. And I was passionate because we could build this indie film studio. And come on, guys, it's not that hard. Not fully appreciating that I, at that point, at 27, had been writing for 15 years. I'd started when I was about 12. I had nearly sold some scripts when I was in my teens. I had continued to write throughout. I had written something that my friend and I made. When I was 27, I was like, guys, we can do this. Here's how we blah, 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 jumped into my early weekend workshop and all that kind of stuff. And it hasn't been, it has been since then, and working with lots of writers from all around the world. I grew up in Hollywood, in LA. So screenwriting was all around me. It was a real thing. So when I got to Australia and I started seeing all around, and people didn't have that 15 years of prior experience. People didn't have that sense that this is real. People had to be taught all that. And so I realized along the way that there's a bigger journey here that people have to go through, that I just naturally did in my life based on where I was born and my passions and all that kind of stuff. But everyone can go through that. Everyone can do it, but it requires that you have some sort of reason or purpose. Now, as I've gotten older, that aspect of it has gotten very frustrating. I mean, the fact that we have 29 people on this live stream at the moment is fantastic, and I thank you all, and I love you all for being here. I feel like we should have 10 times that many people based on the value that we've been doing here each week. I hope the regulars here would agree. Hopefully the casual observers and that one person who just left doesn't agree, clearly. It's I think when you have these kinds of little challenges or obstacles, or, there are hurdles that come up or interruptions along the way, and it brings into focus the fact that this is more challenging than maybe you thought when you first started out. That can be very frustrating and demotivating and dispiriting, all those kinds of words. This is why it's so important to know your why at the beginning of the journey. I am as committed as ever to building my indie film studio. I'm forever trying to find new ways, new strategies. What do I have to do? What am I missing to get more people on board, to have more people understand and appreciate what I'm trying to do here, or understand the opportunity and get excited by and inspired by what we can do. We can do things we wouldn't have been able to do 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because the internet is mature now. Anyone can go out and start their own show at this point. There's an infinite array of potential. I keep doing it. There's an infinite array of potential opportunity that we're just not seeing and not tapping into. And I think it's because we're stuck in outmoded paradigms. If you're currently feeling less inspired and less motivated than you were perhaps early on, maybe reevaluate, rethink what the actual goal is. Because if the goal is still to sell your studio blockbuster, or to get your TV show made, or to get an agent, or to break into Hollywood, or that kind of stuff, could you be inspired or re-energized and re-motivated by looking at sort of the level down from that and all this extraordinary opportunity that is available at that level down from that? The local projects, or low budget or indie filmmaking, or corporate filmmaking. There are possibilities for writing for fictional narrative stuff that is sponsored by a product. You could create that opportunity. I'm working on a little sort of bonus thing for a new book that I'm working on that will specifically talk about what those kinds of opportunities are. They're all around us, and it's not even so much looking for tapping into that existing opportunity. Everyone watching this right now has the ability to create and generate this kind of work, this kind of opportunity for yourself. So I wonder, and maybe not, tell me in the comments by the time we get down to the comment, by the time I keep scrolling and we get there, I'll revisit this for you specifically, Shane. Does that help? Can that help? Could you see how to make that help? Because for me, it is a big motivator, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily a motivator for you guys. So let me know if that does work for you. And if not, we can get more specific into, thinky feely stuff as well as we go along. Boston Joe says, hi. I'm going to pop that up here simply because I love the brevity, but also because you did a little super chat, which I'll get to in a second here. But I just want to say hi. Hi, Boston Joe. Debbie says, smash that like. I would never say such a thing, but since Debbie said it, while you're at it, smash that like button. Actually, apparently clicking the like button does help the algorithm and does help the channel because it's engagement. If you guys are actually chatting and stuff, that's engagement too. So all that stuff helps. I don't know if it's going to help anyone see this live stream after the fact, unless you know it's there. But anyway, every little bit you guys can do. Hey, somebody smashed the like button. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Natural born gardener and hang on. Yeah, Debbie said before we get to Vasco, we're gonna shame more people aren't here live. Very motivated to be with like-minded folks. I gotta say it's motivating for me as well. I'm super excited when I see that you guys are here and interested in a part of all this. So fantastic. Video Vasco says natural born gardener and inspiration time writer, but not that long ago started doing the art of war thing as well. Or is that the War of Art? Is that the Steve Pressman thing? I haven't actually read it. I've only sort of read synopses of it. Lately, the end of society is a major drive blocker. The end of society. Are you talking about the pandemic specifically, or are you talking about potential things like climate change and all those kinds of rather distressing things that we face as a society right now? If it's that, and I don't know if it is, so I'll pull this off just in case it's not, because I don't want you to necessarily feel like you're associated with my rant. But so we live in we could say distressing times, perhaps. We're as we do this live, in case anyone ever watches this in the future, we're still in a pandemic. Parts of the world are having their worst moments of it. Parts of the world are seeming to be getting past it. We have climate change issues happening. We have, extreme weather events and all that happening more frequently. And so the human brain can very easily go off into catastrophic thinking or negative thinking, or we can look forward and anticipate the worst. It's part of the human superpower. Part of what makes us us, what has made us survive this long, is our ability to think about potential catastrophe. Because by thinking about potential catastrophe, we can do something about it. We can try to head it off the path, nip it in the bud, develop new technology to counteract it, all that kind of stuff. So I probably would fall into this category of people known as what are they called? Techno optimists, or like people who believe that we are going to find and develop technologies that will combat and counteract a lot of the negative things that we experience. Now, you may not believe that, or you might not think we're going to get there in time, or you might whatever. And so So this idea of worrying about the future is indeed an inspiration and motivation killer. And I do completely agree with that. I've got a little toddler now, which I talk about in every show. Sorry about that for people who are tired of hearing about that stuff. But he's 3 and about to turn 3. And, I'm imagining a full lifetime ahead for him. And so those kinds of issues and challenges that we face are a big deal. The thing for me, and maybe this will help you, whether or not you have kids of your own, is we got to do something. Like we have to do something to help make his life better and his future better. And so to me, that becomes a motivating force. That becomes something that can drive us. Now, it may seem a little silly to a lot of people that I'm, passionate about these kinds of things and sitting here talking about screenwriting and trying to convince writers to write. But if you recall, or if you don't know me, then for the first time, here you go. I'm a big believer that our lives are literally a one-of-a-kind window on the world. And so we each experience a unique window. And because we do, it's kind of up to us to share the insights and the lessons and the perspective that we see. And the best, most effective way for that to stick in someone else's mind is through story, through giving them a non-confrontational, visceral experience to sit back and enjoy as entertainment, through which we can say what we want to say, give our perspective, what have you. As long as we're fair and as long as we're not just sort of feeding somebody an agenda or propaganda or whatever, then it becomes a way to share our ideas and our perspectives and our insights. So to me, the movie thing, the storytelling thing, the creativity thing is literally the solution, the answer to some of these larger challenges and issues and problems that we face. I'm not sure everyone's going to agree with that or believe the same as I do, but that's where mine comes from. And so there's a certain urgency in that, depending on how big you think it is. The other thing I really believe is that human beings are infinitely adaptable. We adapt. That's what we do. And so there probably will be some changes ahead. We'll adapt. We'll figure out how to adapt to those things. If you ever watch science fiction, and I'm a sci-fi guy, but here's just a thought for you to ponder. In a lot of sci-fi, going back a lot of years, there has been this idea of terraforming, where we would go to an uninhabitable planet and we would recreate that planet and put oceans and clouds and clean environment and all that on there. That is the future imagination that we will need for climate issues, right? We can't just sit back and go, oh, well, someday it'll happen because some science fiction writer wrote about it. But we can use those things to inspire creativity in others, to inspire potential solutions, to inspire activity in a more positive direction, all that stuff. So the point that I'm getting at is not to change anyone's opinion on any of these kinds of often controversial ideas, but rather to simply say, whatever thing you're worried about, or whatever thing is maybe blocking your creativity, to use what Vasco, the word he used, try to imagine the entirely opposite potential outcome. And if you can see that and see that as a real possibility, let that be your motivation. Let's make that happen. Let's reignite from that point. Does it make sense? Anyway, that's my take on it. Let's see. Tuna Cat says, I'm a scene away from finishing my screenplay. It's a bit long though. Can you recommend a screenplay consultant so I can get some notes? I don't have any consultants that I can recommend at the moment. I'm possibly, here, I'll pop that up here just so everybody can see. I'm thinking of possibly changing the way that what I'm trying to do is done. I'm debating whether or not to talk about this now or talk about it in an upcoming episode. But since you guys are here now, I may as well just sort of float some ideas here. So I've been thinking recently. So the reason I wanted to bring it up after this specifically is screenplay consulting a service that you guys would like from me, or from, if I can put together some effective consultants and people who can help you. It would have to be a fee-based service, because the people who can do that at an effective level tend to be talented and hard to find. And so, I would not want to charge. I've done this in the past. I have offered consulting services in the past. And the problem is always that it just takes so much time to do that to get the good people, you need to charge a lot of money for it. I would never charge someone for a consulting service that I thought would just sort of like give them some stuff to think about. Like, I would want to make sure that it was a consulting service. The challenge that I have, Tuna Cat, is that consulting is so specific to who is going to ultimately produce your project. I can give you notes as a script consultant about your project, but my notes are ultimately meaningless if they disagree with a producer who would read your project and go, I want to make that film. Because whatever notes they have are the only important notes that matter, right? The challenge that we have with screenplay consulting, and this is true across the board, is you have to pay somebody for that service because it's a time-consuming service, and they've developed skills to be able to help you with your consultation. But who knows if it's any good? Who knows if it's going to be helpful? Who knows if it's going to be the direction you need it to be, right? All that stuff makes script consulting just a fraught sort of situation. My thought was my whole approach is I want writers to be able to write at a mastery level intuitively. That's the end goal of fast screenplay, to be able to take any idea that's in your head and turn it into a viable page turner, production ready screenplay intuitively, quickly, in a matter of weeks or months, preferably weeks, because the faster you get at writing mastery level stuff, the more likely you are, the more of a value, a resource you are to producers and production companies, the more of a benefit production companies get to having you around, right? The problem is learning how to do that takes time and is challenging and so my thought was maybe developing writers through that process who can then become, as almost like part of their apprenticeship training, can become consultants for other writers. Once you sort of have this skill set and we go through the process of producing our first sort of lower budget films and all that, then become sort of consultants as well. The idea is I'm trying to build a machine that not only gets you to production, but also can eventually provide you with some sort of income around that, right? That's the dream. That's the ideal. That's not what it is right now. So don't sign up thinking it's that and then complain that I've given you false promises or something, because that's what I'm sort of working toward. But I would like to, I know that is a challenge. I've had several people, even in the last couple of weeks, reach out to me about script consultancy. And I know that is something that writers want. I'll scroll down and let me just quickly see if anybody said anything. Okay. So anyway, nothing jumped out at me right away, but, so anyway, let me know if script consultancy is a service that you guys would want, and because if so, I'm going to try to see if I can figure out a way to do it where it's as low a cost as I can bring it to writers, but yet still be a high level thing. It's a challenging thing to do, and there's because only the producers that's going to produce your film's notes are the ones that matter. It's always going to be a little bit fraught because I can give you the best notes in the world, any script consultant can. But if you disagree with those notes, maybe they're not going in the same direction you want to go, or we highlight something that you're sensitive about. There's just all sorts of challenges that come from that. So anyway, if you guys would like me to try to see if I can solve that problem as part of the big grand vision of all this, I will attempt to. Shane says, I find other people can be a great motivator. If someone is expecting something from me, producer, collaborator, it helps because writing is so solitary. So this is the whole thing of making yourself accountable. One of the things we do in FAST is you commit, like I think it's the second step or the third step. You commit. What are you committing to? If you have that commitment, you've made that commitment, then you meet that commitment. We set deadlines at a certain point, and those deadlines are based on not knowing what's coming. So those deadlines are never going to be met correctly. It's not about meeting them. It's about having them. If you can set deadlines for yourself, if you can set targets for yourself, if you can have some sort of public accountability, that's why I always encourage the writers in the system to post to the forum, because you have some public accountability there, and it acts as this internal motivator. It doesn't matter if you hit your targets from an objective standpoint, but anything you can do, this is natural, because this taps into who we are as people. We're social creatures. We early on had societies and civilizations that were very much about, you're standing in the society. And so you don't want to let down the other people who either rely on you or who look up to you or who need something from you. So we're sort of born and we're wired to do that, to step up in that kind of a situation. So whatever you can do to recreate that environment is going to help, Boston Joe says, usually I start with an iconic scene, something that I can vividly see. I build a story and character around it. The big high is when I can finally write the scene that started the whole thing off. So in other words, it could be in the middle, it could be towards the end, but it's all about sort of getting to that one thing, and then you've built the system around it. That's cool. That's an interesting motivator. So that's often just like the thing that kicks you into it. But what do you do, Boston Joe, if you have, you're just not feeling it one day, or the motivation's not quite there, or you're not, you should be writing, but you don't feel like writing? How do you write on those days, or how do you make sure that you keep moving forward on those days? That's kind of the key, that's the, that's the thing that ideally for me, I would like for you guys to have that thing that keeps pushing you through. I made a video that's on this channel somewhere. It's probably the favorite video that I ever made on this channel, and it's called "When Will You Quit?" Somebody can find it and post it in the comments or something, and a link to it. I made it years ago now. It was when I was doing the Screenwriting Uncut series. My first attempt at just an off-the-cuff, unedited screenwriting show. So I'm a little younger there. But the question basically is, at what point in the process are you going to quit? If you're not going to quit, if you can make it so that you will not give up when the going gets tough. I can't figure out how to turn it into a compelling story. Forget this, quit. Or I wrote a first draft. The first draft is terrible. I quit. Or I start rewriting it. Rewriting is too hard. I quit. Right? So, it really is just all about figuring out how to get through the process so that you won't quit. If I can do that for you, if I can help you, give you the tools, give you the motivation, the inspiration, help you see the big picture, with this silly weekly show where I'm sitting here talking for 3 hours. If I can, get you excited about continuing to push forward, well, then you're going to continue developing those skills. You learn writing by writing. You learn writing by doing it. It's the whole reason FAST is set up the way that it is, so that you learn by doing. You learn by simply immersing into the next step. If you don't join FAST, you do it on your own. You figure out how to keep going, keep writing, keep learning, keep developing. It doesn't have to be good. You don't have to get to the thing. You don't have to be inspired about whatever it is that's pushing you through. You just have to keep doing it. You have to keep moving forward. Anyone who knows me, anybody who's been in the forums, that's like my catchphrase. That's my mantra. Keep moving forward. Because if you keep moving forward, by just the nature of the movement itself, you will continue to develop your skills. If you're going down a dark alley, if your writing is going astray and, oh, geez, this is really starting to suck pretty bad, that's okay, because simply by going down that path, you're going to see what doesn't work. And that's going to help you on the next attempt. So it's all about continuing to move forward. I think I just went off on a little tangent there. Okay, so Tobias says, Tobias, didn't you email me saying you weren't going to be here today? Anyway, I'm glad you're here. Writing prevents boredom. If I didn't write, I simply would not be who I am. I guess many of us were born to write. Fast screenplay creates an anchor. As much of the time I drift nowhere. So this is, yeah, look, at the end of the day, if you just write, if you just keep moving forward and you just write new script after new script after new script, and you don't actually focus each day on learning something new, on trying to improve, on building your process as you go through, then what's going to happen is you're going to keep spinning in circles. You can get really good at some pretty bad habits, right? Because you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. This is why I'm a big believer of go through a process. This is why I built the system I built, so that each day you're getting something new. You're learning, you're developing, you're moving, not just moving forward. You're moving forward in a targeted way. You're moving forward, acquiring a new skill, learning a new insight, trying something new. Now, if you're not going to do that, that's fine, but replicate that somehow in your own writing. Figure out, okay, I've written a script. Now, the next script, I want to learn how to build suspense into my story. So focus on adding suspense to your project. Focus on trying to improve it, trying to improve all the different elements of it. I've estimated there's somewhere between 200 and 300 different unique skills a writer needs to have at a professional level to be able to write and sell screenplays professionally. Now, how are you going to focus on each of those? Are you going to do those individually? I weave them through Fast Screenplay, which is why Fast Screenplay is a challenge. It's very hard for people the first time through because there's so many new things that you're learning. But if you're just simply moving forward, a little bit of incremental progress every day, whether it's on your own or whether it's with me and the group, at the end of the day, if you're making incremental progress as you're moving forward, you are developing. And that development is what creates that focus and gets you to improve. If all you're doing is just, I'm inspired, I'm going to write today. I'm inspired, I'm going to write today. I'm inspired, I'm going to write today. And you're not focusing on improving your work, then all you're doing is filling up your bookshelf, which will also get better over time. It's just going to take probably 15 to 20 years to get really good at screenwriting by just writing randomly, because you're not focused on deliberately trying to improve. So anyway, not quite what a little beyond what Tobias was trying to say, but there you go. You can pin those notes in chat. I don't know how to do that. I'm not actually looking on the chat screen on the YouTube thing. I'm looking on my Debbie. I'm looking at my Ecamm Live software is what it's called. Rich Silverwood said, hi, Jeff. How important is the title of a screenplay? Should I change the title of my screenplay if there's a pre-existing film with the same name? Not necessarily. It really depends on how iconic or how known that film is. If you write a script about, two competing galaxies fighting against each other and you call it Star Wars, yeah, you can't do that. If you were going to write something like, and call it Men in Black, that's too recognizable. It's too associated with that thing. If it's something like Innocence or something like, I don't know. Let's pick some random title, and maybe there's a short film that was made with that title, or maybe there's a movie made with that title, but it's kind of, nobody really knows about it. It's not, doesn't have a whole lot of recognition from 10 years ago or something like that. That it's perfectly fine usually. You probably just want to get a good sense of if the people that you would be marketing that project to would know that other project and therefore possibly have any associations, negative or otherwise, with that. One of the big things that I try to convey and that I'm a big believer. So, understanding it from the other standpoint. I mean, we had thousands and thousands of projects come in. I don't know I'm not sure if you're new to the channel, Rich, but, so I don't know if you know my story. I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but I had a production company. We were looking for screenplays for about 18 years. And so over that time, we received about 30,000 project submissions from all around the world. I read about 7,000 screenplays. One of the things that I have found along the way is that I can pick up on, some negative association I might have a negative association with this kind of story or this kind of idea or this title or this character or whatever it might be, simply because of the kind of projects that I'm trying to make or what I have encountered in the industry myself. Everyone's going to do that, right? So if you're writing a horror film and you want to call it Carrie, for example, even if you spell it differently, it's going to have an association with a very famous movie called Carrie from the 70s that was like an iconic horror film. So if that's the world you're trying to connect with, then you have to know what those associations are. So maybe you would spell it differently, and it's a story that kind of takes some of those ideas and modernizes them, takes them off in a different direction or something. Well, then maybe the play on the name is something that, I guess what I'm trying to get at is the way I would always approach it and advise is what you really want is to always understand how what you're putting in your script, your title, your synopsis, all that stuff, how the reader is going to interpret it. And does it make or imply a compelling promise for them? And then does the project itself exceed that their imagination and their expectations from that? Because that's ultimately the answer to to whether or not you can or should do that. So you do want to avoid things that are trademarked or, the big, anything that's like there's a toy brand built around it. Don't use that. Avengers, I would not call my script Avengers if I was you. But some of the lesser known stuff is probably okay. So it always depends. Like everything, it really always depends. Boston Joe says, so in my method, if I had written E.T., I would have started with the kids. On the bikes pedaling in the sky in front of the full moon. The rest would unwind from that. Well, so if you have, this is coming back from Joe's earlier comment. So if you did think of that iconic thing with the kids flying in front of the moon, if that was an image that popped in your head, that's absolutely a great image to keep and sort of tailor something to. Keep in mind, though, that is a very specific image for a very specific part of the story. It would be very easy if that was your, if that was like this driving image that was your motivation. Be almost, I could see it being almost easy to make your story too much about that and not sort of the larger story, if that makes sense. Anyway, something to think about. Perfect. So I want to say thank you so much to, what is that? There you go. Thank you, Tobias, for that. I really appreciate that. Pounds are good. What's the exchange rate? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I thank you. For everyone watching, I don't do this for the super chats, but it's a very nice thing. I thank you very much. Please, I will answer any questions without the need to send me anything. So anyone who sends any money, like Joe as well, thank you, Joe, as well. This is kind of just a nice thing. So my goal here, for anyone who doesn't know, if you're new to all this, is to do this more or less at cost. Everything that I've built, Fast Screenplay, the Weekend Screenwriting Workshop, the new thing that I'm building, which will be revealed soon, which has been revealed in the past, but people here probably don't remember it. is all every dollar that comes in gets poured right back into it. So all super chat funds will go right back into helping build this live stream. It hasn't tallied up to a whole lot over since the beginning of all this. Whoa, there you go. So as a result, we haven't been able to. So we haven't been able to, buy new light or new camera or anything like that. But that's where that kind of thing will go, is to try to sort of solve this stuttery technical problem, which we've swapped out the piece of machinery that I thought was causing the problem, and we're still having the problem. So I don't know what the stuttery thing is all about. If anyone is smart and technical, reach out to me. I also want to grow and expand this show. I'm not sure who's here, who's seen all this before, and so who's heard all this before. But the goal of this show ultimately is for each episode to be a deep dive into a different aspect of screenwriting. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a different topic, and then we're going to spend the first hour and we're going to do a deep dive lesson into that topic. So for example, one week we might do subplots and we'll do a deep dive into subplots. And the next week we might do dialogue and we'll do a deep dive into dialogue. And the next week we'll do how to make your characters more authentic, and we'll do a deep dive into that. What this was going to be today is the secret language of screenwriting, the sort of how the words are meant to be on the page and the mistakes that like 99% of writers make with it. I've needed to put together some examples, and I have not had the time. And so I'm working with one volunteer. If anyone else wants to volunteer and help out in this regard, send me an email at thescreenwritingshow@gmail.com. I should probably have an overlay for that. I still don't. It's no team yet. But so what I ultimately want to do is have clips from movies. I want to have examples from screenplays. I want to have your work to showcase and really make these ideas clear each week. And then what we're going to do also on our end is, after we've done that, we'll get some feedback. We'll find out what you guys want to know that we didn't cover, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll use that to build a module as part of a new resource, this new grand resource library that I'm putting together. So what we're doing right now is, rather than keep promising you this, I'm pushing it back for a few weeks. We're going to do this kind of free-flowing conversation for the next couple of weeks, while on the back end, we sort of get the next several episodes together, so that we're always ahead of things. And then it'll start looking like a more produced show, hopefully in a couple of weeks. It all comes back to time and resources and who volunteers and who doesn't and all that kind of a thing. So anyway, that's what we're trying to do now. But every dollar that comes in from all of it goes right back into the next thing. So every fast screenplay dollar goes back into fast screenplay. Our raw cost of it, I found that only 1 in 3 people actually do the whole thing. So our costs per user are actually lower, which is why we have a discounted price for it at the moment. That said, and then all of that revenue goes back into, and not that there's a lot of that revenue anyway, but all of it will go back into the system, building it, expanding it, taking it to the next level. It's currently version 1.2, I think, and I have it mapped out to version 9. So there's a ton of stuff that I want to build if more people would be a part of it. Eventually, we're going to have a writer's room at the end, so that when people finish the system, they'll go into a writer's room where we'll write projects. Each person will write a project, and we'll pick one and we'll go actually make it. And then the writers that are in that group will get a percentage ownership of the film. So hopefully you'll make back all your money that you even paid to join in the first place through the production module at the end. That's the hope. It's not guaranteed at the moment, but just to be clear, I don't want anyone signing up because of false promises or anything like that, but that is the goal. And my goal is to build an indie film studio that makes literally hundreds of films every year with production teams all around the world. And so it's something very big that I'm trying to build. I'm also trying to build a corollary to that would help writers. I don't know how much far I want to go into it just yet, but I'm trying to find other ways to help writers who have developed those skills to then be able to apply those skills and generate real income from that. Because I understand that it seems like a very long, time consuming, expensive hobby. And the more it becomes a realistic pursuit, not just creatively, but with some reward at the end of it, beyond seeing your name in lights. I think the more we can build that and the more we can make that something tangible and something that you can point to and say, I'm going to do that. I think the more excited people get about it, it becomes this situation that feeds on itself and turns into it. Anyway, my long-winded point is that any dollars that come in go right back into it. So I don't keep any of it for myself. So thank you for all you do for everyone as well. Thank you, Amar. That's nice. Sola says, random question that has nothing to do with screenwriting. Have you watched Friends? And if so, who's your favorite character? I just have to say it. Sola. Yes, I have. I have some friends who are writers and producers on the show. So, and I have many of I was acting back at the time. And so I have many friends who are on the show as well. I don't know if I have a favorite character. They're all great. How can you have favorite characters in a show like that? Hunter says, Jeff, have you ever had an idea for a movie that was stolen from you? Not to my knowledge, and not to my knowledge has anyone that I've ever known have had an idea legitimately stolen from them. Keep in mind, if I have an idea and the way that I turn that idea into a story, let's say I have an idea for, I don't know, a flying elephant, and I write a script. And I send that script to some producer and they go, yeah, I don't like that. But they like the idea of the flying elephant. And they go off and they make a flying elephant movie that's going to be different to mine. Have they stolen my idea? I mean, I suppose it's not ideas. Here's the thing, guys. Ideas are, if you were to go through Fast Screenplay, one of the main takeaways you would have is that there is nothing to worry about with anyone stealing an idea. You have right now more great, viable ideas inside you than you could ever actually use in a lifetime. I have like 100, I think I've talked about this before. I've got like 100 ideas for actual full movies. And I've been teaching this stuff for a while. So like I can see the full movie, like they're not just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have a flying elephant movie? Like it's a movie idea, right? I have so many of these ideas that I will never be able to, I will never have the time to write them, to build them. In theory, I build this indie film studio. Maybe I can start spitting them out to people who don't have any good ideas themselves. But if you've actually gone through and done the work, you're going to have more ideas than you know what to do with either. And here's the thing, ideas spark ideas. So if you have great ideas today and somebody takes that idea, it doesn't really matter ultimately because you're going to have better ideas next, especially if you continue to grow and evolve. The more you continue to grow and evolve, the better you get, the wider your field of view, the more wisdom you develop, the greater perspective you have. Nobody's going to steal that from you. Nobody can. And if they started to steal it from you, they're going to have to steal idea after idea after idea. And if they do that, then it'll be very clear who's stealing your ideas, right? Like it's just what is valuable is your execution of the idea. And the execution of the idea is really hard to do well. And by really hard, I mean very, very few people do it well. It's the whole thing that I'm trying to do here is to help you do it well, to execute on the idea well, not just to have ideas. We can start spitting out ideas all day long if we want to. That doesn't do anything for us. It's executing on those ideas that's the challenge. And because it's so challenging, because so few people can do it well, you're not really in there's not really a huge worry of somebody stealing your stuff because they would have to be really good at doing it, executing it, to be able to make use of that idea. And if they're that good at executing and being able to do something with your idea, they're not going to steal yours because it's too risky. It would be much, much better for them to just use any idea that they came up with if they have those skills. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Shane says the premise exercise you mentioned is great. If there's a way to post and view the results, it'd be fascinating. Or maybe we could send it to you. Yeah, so I didn't make a card, or I had this idea and it was sort of just an idea. Execution is everything. What I would like to do is come up with a premise. Why doesn't somebody here come up with a premise in the chat? I'll get to it as we go through. Come up with some sort of a premise, and then we'll just put it out there, and everyone can create a one-page synopsis of a story about that very premise, using whatever the elements are of that premise. If somebody wants to throw out some premise or something like that, that they don't mind us taking and running with, because we're not stealing it, then go ahead and pop something in there. I'll come to it when I get a little bit further down in the chat, and we'll create a little thing, and I'll see if I can find some sort of freebie giveaway thing for you that would be a nice value for whoever wins. And then we can make it sort of a competition-y thing. And then you can go, I won the first ever screenwriting show competition on your resume, which will mean nothing as it will mean nothing if you win any other competitions as well. Okay, so Tobias says, Jeff, when writing characters with accents, should you say the character is Scottish or Irish, or try to write the dialogue to sound that way? So generally speaking, you want to make sure it's always easy to read and indicate that it's an accent. So one of the things you can do with thick, heavy accents or something like that, not so much probably with Irish or Scottish, because you're English, right? Is that it? So in England, in the UK, for example, you have lots of different accents. So if you want to pinpoint those accents, you probably would just indicate it in the action description somewhere that he speaks with a thick Cockney accent or a Scottish accent or whatever it might be. If you're writing someone who speaks in a foreign accent, so the quintessential American script would have, let's say, a German character or a Japanese character or a Russian character or something, and so they speak in like that broken English. What you can just do is you can more or less like take out some of the qualifier words, like rather than let's get something to eat, just have him say we go eat. So that way, if you know that he speaks with a Russian accent and he says we go eat, you hear the Russian accent, right? If he's Japanese and you say he speaks with a Japanese accent and he says we go eat, you hear the Japanese accent. So you're not making it any harder to read, and you're not like being stereotypical with your, phonetic spelling, which could be very offensive to people, that kind of thing. So, but when it is the same language, or I know some, in the UK or Ireland, some of the jargon gets very, like, to my ear, can't quite interpret what it is. They have subtitles of English on American programming so that we can understand what people in England say. Anyway, don't get me started. But if it's that kind of a thing, then you're probably going to want to find the best way to the goal is to not have the reader slow down as they're reading it, but they still need to be able to understand it, or understand that they will understand it by reading the subtitles, right? So maybe you would just say, John subtitled, whatever, because we know he speaks in a thick accent with lots of jargon or whatever, but then you would just write it in whatever it's subtitled to mean. Make sense? So you'd write the subtitled version, but we know that he speaks in that kind of an accent. Hopefully that makes sense. It's also subjective. So that's not really a rule. My whole thing is make sure your reader is immersed in the experience. So you don't want to do anything that's going to take them out of it or make them have to figure it out or be super confusing or hard to read. So that's my take on it. But you might find other creative ways to do that. So don't take that as a rule. Take that more as, a rule of thumb or sort of a general suggestion. Boston Joe says scripts that are well written but won't make it to the market are still very valuable. If you get the attention of a producer studio, they want to know what else you've got. Yeah. Agreed. Totally. Let's say, Hunter, I thank you for that comment. I'm going to skip right over it because I want somebody else to discover it too. Let's see, Boston Joe, when I need motivation, I put on music. Good stuff. Let's see. Thank you. Good stuff. That sponsor idea is intriguing. Yes. Writing for sponsored entertainment. Stuff. There are cool things. I'm going to get to them as we go through all this as well. So, hi, Dimitri. Let's see. Del Monte Porter. Hello. I don't think I've seen you, so we'll pop you on there. My inspiration comes from my own past experiences and journey through personal sufferings that have shaped my worldview. This is a fantastic thing. At the end of the day, this is where most ideas and inspirations will come from one way or another. So if you've had challenging personal life experience, maybe physical issues or personal relationship issues or just life circumstances, a lot of that kind of stuff can be the source of not just overcoming the odds or whatever. Could be dealing with that kind of stuff. It could be trying to find something while that's just a backdrop. Some of the best stories aren't, I can imagine a story where somebody has this personal suffering situation, and rather than it being about that, maybe it's about just something super normal set against that backdrop. That could be an incredibly compelling way to get someone to understand and to empathize with people who have that plight or whatever it might be, right? So always look for that kind of stuff as your source of inspiration. Now, that's sort of what's going to inspire what you're writing, but what keeps you going as you're doing it? Is it to get that finished, to try to say something, to share a worldview, or to highlight a perspective to the wider world? Or is it to overcome your own challenges, or what keeps you going on those days that you're not motivated to keep going? That's kind of the key. But thanks for that. Let's see. So many dystopian futures, so little time. They're having conversations in the chat. Hopefully we won't run into a technical glitch here. Hopefully this will keep going all the way through, and then it won't get interrupted as a, if it gets interrupted, I'm afraid it's going to break the chat. So I love having the chat here for people to watch the video back on. So, okay, let's see. Talking to each other. Shane says, I agree with what you said about adjusting my why. Working through fast and wanting to be a part of your indie film studio has become a new motivation for me, and it keeps me going. Keep in mind, the indie film studio that I'm trying to build, I don't know if I'm going to be able to build it. I was convinced that the first group, and then the second group, and then the third group of people that would go through it would actually develop these skills and keep going. And the people that quit along the way, the people that just, it's too hard, or lost their own motivation or life got in the way or whatever, has kept pushing that back. And so, that is my motivation as well. And that's, I can see so many things that would come from having the indie film studio. I can see so many things that it would then lead to. It's like I'm trying to find a quick analogy. It's like you're standing here and you want to get to here, but you don't want to get to here. You actually want to get to there, but you have to get to here to get to there. And it's like, this is so elusive. And so I'm forever looking for different ways to get to there. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to build is a creativity and content development pipeline. I've had a conversation with somebody who's one of my volunteers and somebody who helps me strategize and build stuff, who was saying maybe FAST needs to be reframed as just a course or some sort of training. And I was trying to say, but it's not. It's like, it is the engine. It's the thing that is going to create the content, because you put any writer in at the beginning and they're all going to come out with something different and unique and powerful at the end. So that is going to be the machine that grows the indie film studios. It's like, well, why don't I just start looking for scripts outside of the system instead? Well, because I did that for 18 years and couldn't find anything. So that's the whole reason I built this thing in the first place. So it's one of those challenges where it's like the thing that motivates you is also super frustrating. So you have to almost have a bigger why. You want to be a part of that film studio because X or Y or Z, whatever, right? Like what beyond that is the thing that's going to give you that fuel. Because if I'm unable to build it through no fault of my own, through entirely it being my fault, whatever, if I'm unable to do that, is that then going to be an excuse or a reason or a letdown of some sort that's going to keep you from continuing? I don't think it should. I think regardless of me, regardless of anyone here, anyone watching this video later on, none of us matter. What matters is you and your progress and your forward motion. So it's all about figuring out how to make that happen, even if all of the rest of it falls away. So anyway, that's my take on it. So, okay. Tobias says, is it wrong to write dystopian screenplays at the present time, even if they are written as a warning? So dystopian fiction dystopian fiction often does its best historically when we are in scary or dangerous or trying times, or when we're perceived to be in those kinds of times. So I would not tell anyone to shy away from dystopian fiction. It's not the kind of thing that I want to make. Doesn't mean I won't make it at some point when we got a full studio, but it wouldn't be the first projects that I'd make, because my first projects are going to be more optimistic and more solution driven, I guess. Not that they're about solutions, but just that's the mindset. But there's a huge market, and will always be, I would say, probably, for dystopian fiction, because if you have some sense of dread about the future and you see a dystopian movie about, a dystopian future, you can play it out in your own imagination. That can trigger ideas for what to do instead, or how to prepare yourself, or whatever it might be. There's all sorts of reasons why that kind of fiction is known to be beneficial or good, or have a positive effect. So I would not say to steer clear of it at all. I would say, yeah, if that's what you want to write. And again, I don't think you have to write that. I think there's going to be plenty of market for non-dystopian stuff, just straight dramas, straight comedies, straight escapist entertainment, all of it. So it really depends on what you want to write. Don't write because you think it's what people want, or what you think it's what I want, or you think it's what some producer somewhere wants. Write what you want to write. The key is just to learn how to write that in a way that they can say yes to it, but you still write what you want to write. You still have to be driven by that. Otherwise you're going to run out of fuel. So, okay. See, Boston Joe says, when you bring an audience into a new world and story, they get a rare amount of attention. In this modern world, they are also more open to consider what the story addresses. Yes. Yeah, that's true. Let's see. Hunter, I have seen Unforgiven. I have not seen. Have I seen Outlaw Josie Wales? I don't remember. Tobias says, you prefer optimism in sci-fi rather than bleak dystopian stories. Yeah. So I think I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes, but who has time to watch through what I think is almost 24 hours worth of content already? Yeah, I have an optimistic view of the future. I think the problems that we create, or that befall us as human beings, we're adaptable, and we have this thing inside our brains that's called imagination. And imagination is, if you haven't watched my TED Talk, watch my TED Talk. It's about how the imagination is a canvas that expands itself. And so because we have this exponentially expanding canvas inside our own brains, literally our imagination can lead to ideas upon which we build new imagination. We can go very far very quickly in our minds. And I think that's not just the reason we go to the dystopian place is because we feel powerless in the face of some grand potential looming catastrophe. But we don't have to. Our mind can just as easily go to an extraordinary place. nanobots in our bloodstream to cure cancer or to cure, to repair damage from, whatever years of whatever we did that was toxic to ourselves. Like, these things are in our future, whether they're close enough that they become something that becomes a part of our everyday life 20 years from now, or whether they're still, the technology is harder than we think. And so therefore it pushes back. Like, we're on this forward march toward technology being our savior, more or less, right? Like, it's an inevitable march that we're going to run into challenges along the way that may push back some of those dates. So some of my youthful optimism, I'm getting older and I'm going, it's supposed to happen by now, but it's like, well, it's still coming, but it's harder to get there than we think. So, that's really the race that I think we're in. So I don't think we're destined to have some sort of dystopian future at all. So, in fact, what I would like to do, my sort of MO, if you watch the TED Talk, my goal here is, what I want to do with an indie film studio is make lots of films that sort of prepare human imagination for the future and expand our minds and expand our imagination so that we're telling stories that get people more optimistic and excited about the future, or finding solutions to problems for the future, or see the world in a different way that helps them cope or makes. I believe that if my films, specifically the films that I would want to make, I believe that if I create stuff that is sort of consistently has this sort of wider picture worldview, the terraforming thing I mentioned earlier, if you have that wider sort of view of things, I think you can inspire people to be their best selves, and in so doing, bring about the better future. And so I just want to tell those kinds of stories. And I'd rather have people look back on my body of work and say, those stories inspired me. And those stories were, some of my favorite stories. They lifted me up, rather than, man, that's one bleak filmography, like, not that there's anything wrong with that, building a bleak filmography. There's, Lars von Trier has a bleak filmography and he's like a genius at what he does. So, okay. It's, I can appreciate that. I can admire that, but it's not what I would make. So everybody's different, and we should be able to, and we should aspire to celebrate our uniqueness and differences and different approaches. It's the variety of it all that makes it worthwhile. That's what the experience is all about. So anyway, Debbie says, could we start a private Facebook group to critique each other's work? So my feeling on this, Debbie, is that you can. I'm not going to, and I wouldn't want it to be a part of this. And the reason is because in fast screenplay, nobody reads each other's work. You read each other's experience of the process so that we can learn from each other's journey, but not steer each other's creativity. One of the things that this is a deliberate thing that I did at the very beginning, from my lessons from watching other people teach screenwriting. I did all the courses and classes and workshops and seminars and webinars and all that stuff early on as well. And almost all the classes had people reading and commenting on each other's work. And what I found, my opinion was anyway, that if you tell me you don't like something or give me some suggestion about my work, well, I am going to automatically be biased by that and probably try to adjust it to appease you in some way. And there's room for that in the alignment phase. There's room for that when you're deliberately trying to adjust for effect for the reader. But when it comes to creativity, finding your story, developing your story, fleshing it out, writing it, shaping it, when all that part of the process, I do not believe should be steered by someone else's opinion. And so I'm not a fan of those kinds of feedback, self-critique works, because it's very often blind leading the blind. It's very often some opinionated people jump in and start throwing their weight around, or I had a script produced at one point, so my opinion is more valuable than everyone else's, or whatever, that kind of stuff. And even my opinion, and I would argue that I have a pretty learned opinion on all this stuff. Even my opinion is just my opinion. Like I don't want to steer your creative evolution. I don't want to steer, I don't want my opinions or point of view to be the thing that decides which way you go with your voice and your creative career. So, I love I thank you for the suggestion. I love the idea. And I love the creative thought behind it. And by all means, if that's what everyone here wants to do, you go with my blessing. I'm all for you guys going off and doing that. It's just not kind of where I'm at or what I would want to do. So that's not what I would not be doing that. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So let's see. Okay. Dimitri said he would send stuff back to me. Appreciate that. It's not so much about sending it to me. I don't have time to do critiques or assessments or any of that kind of stuff myself. What I'm wanting to do is see if I would start doing it if I could do it in a way that would set up a framework that when people finished fast and they had those skills and they demonstrated that they had those skills, that they could then use that framework to critique. And in that way, we could try to do a more objective critique based upon what the writer wants. But keep in mind, when I'm talking about also critiquing or doing that kind of thing, it's after. I don't even read anyone's work until they're done. And I mean done. Like they got it. This is the best I can possibly make this thing. I have tested it out in the world. I don't read anybody's stuff until a payoff phase. And even then, only if they really, really, super beg, please, because it doesn't matter what I think, honestly. It matters what the producer thinks. So anyway, okay, cool, good. Let's see. Yeah, so Tobias says consulting is very useful, but you need at least 4 different readers to get an idea of what needs work in a script. So this is what I was saying in one of the earlier episodes of this. One person's opinion doesn't matter. What matters is consensus. So in the alignment phase, which is where you send your work out and get feedback, and then you interpret that feedback, you figure out what the note's really trying to say, and you try to figure out if there's some sort of consensus around it. If 2 people, 1 person, 2 people, 3 people don't like this character, but 10 people love that character, well, if you only got those 3 people, you're going to make changes to that character, and everybody else is going to go, why did you change that character? So it's really about figuring out what you are trying to achieve, and have you done that effectively or not? So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Boston Joe says, let's say I had a very groomed script and some amateur producers who would support its production. We could use a general contractor to help us get from here to there, a finished film. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying there, Boston Joe. If we're not too far off in another direction, maybe clarify that for me a little bit later. Third Eye Pirate says, I've been paying for my feedback. It sucks, but damn, it's worth it. So it will always be valuable to get someone else's point of view when you're finished. Always keep in mind that some of that feedback could be sending you in the wrong direction, possibly. Not to say it's all going to. There's people out there that give great feedback, and that stuff is absolutely worth its weight in gold. And if you find someone who can do good critiquing, and it's objective and it's helping you on your journey rather than trying to sort of push you in some direction, and it's really all about getting you to what you want it to be, make note of that person. Keep that person in your files and send your work to them, and keep paying them for it, because you're right. Okay, cool. So there's several people who are interested in for sure, a script consultant with your quality stamp would be fantastic. Cool. Well, let's see. So if that is something you guys like, or if that's something that there is interest in, we're going to do a strategy session tomorrow and try to see if I can figure out how to. What I'm trying to do right now is trying to figure out how to. My goal is to have a long list of writers who can take any idea We can workshop it, and they'll be able to turn that idea into a viable production ready screenplay that fits within our production limitations at will, right? Quickly, effectively, intuitively. That skill set is very, very hard to find. I built a whole system to give people that skill set. The problem that I found along the way is so many people quit, or so many people don't follow through, or people say they're going to follow through. They click the buttons. I'm following through, but they're not really doing anything. You can't fake it. Either you have the skill set or you don't have the skill set. And so building that skill set is what I'm trying to do. I had this thought the other day where if most of what I'm doing is appealing to, let's say, newer writers or people who don't really know too much, and I'm having to continue to sort of reteach the basics, if I'm having to reteach on this show all the stuff that's already in the weekend screenwriting workshop, well, then this is just going to take a lot longer. So I've been thinking about how can I maybe redesign it or add new things or change the strategy a little bit to try to get writers from here to here faster, so that we can get into production sooner, so that we can build the film studio sooner, so that I can keep going back to that well of creativity, those writers who have that skill set. What's a better way to do this? And so we're trying to think strategically how to do it. Consultancy was something that I had ruled out because 15 years ago, I burned out on doing it, and it's not something that I have time to do myself. So it's really something that I'm sort of floating out there as, should we add this to the structure of the thing? So I thank you guys for all your sort of feedback and all that on it. Also, Third Eye Pirates, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. I plan on doing Fast tomorrow. Awesome. Fantastic. I'm curious if you thought about having Fast members do commercials and shorts and showing those off. So yes, believe it or not, again, as I'm starting to rethink strategically how to go about doing this, and are there things that we can do in the shorter term to help build the longer term, and believe it or not, commercials and shorts, not specifically commercials and shorts, but that kind of a thing, sort of maybe some interim projects, would possibly be something that we could weave into the strategy. So I did actually have this idea for the corporate stuff, and maybe even building a whole sort of agency to do that kind of work, where the pool of writers would be who we'd use to develop that kind of stuff. It means building a whole separate business, which I'm not terribly enthusiastic about doing. But it could be a profit center business, which could help fuel all this other stuff, since, every dollar goes right back into it. If I could build a profit center business, then that would help build this stuff a bit faster, even if fewer people joined us, what have you. So creating stuff in that regard, possibly that's where commercials and shorts may come in quite handy. The reason I have resisted it up until this point, and again, I'm repeating myself for people who know me or who have been here for a while, is that with Fast, you're working on a feature film. And part of the reason is because to grab someone's attention, pull them in, give them an emotional experience that builds and grows, and so at the end they're super satisfied after an hour and a half to 2 hours, is a whole different skill set than making a short film where you grab someone's attention quickly, you give them some cool twist thing, and you dazzle them in 7 minutes. Anyone can capture someone's attention and hold it for 7 minutes, but very few people are able to do that really well at feature length. And so I've always focused on the feature length, because if you have this whole bag of skills, then you can pluck whichever ones you need for the 7-minute thing or for the TV commercial, what have you. But perhaps, you guys tell me, perhaps the better strategic way to do it would be to sort of incorporate some of that into the journey itself. I don't know. I'll add that to the conversation for tomorrow for a little strategy session that we're doing tomorrow. But thank you for that super chat as well, and for that. And if you do join me in Fast, fantastic. I'm happy to see you there. And anyone who's in Fast can tell you that I'm 100% committed to making sure you guys go all the way. So pipe up, Fast users. Tell them how committed I am. Anyway, let's see. How long did it take to put Fast Screenplay together? It's a remarkable creation. Oh, thank you. I have to do it just because it's a little self-promotional. So I spent about a year developing Fast. I spent another 3 years building Fast, and I have been refining Fast as it goes along as we get feedback and stuff. I've made minor tweaks here and there. It's largely what it originally was. I have a whole new sort of layer to it. The next version of it basically is going to cost me somewhere on the order of $180,000 to $240,000 to put together based on the quotes that I've had. And to actually build version 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 9, some of the technology and the later stuff is just emerging now. I'll let your imagination go sci-fi directions with that. But there's some really, really cool things that I have in mind and that I want to build it into. I've always said anyone who joins Fast gets all the free upgrades for life. So there's no more revenue from people who've already been in Fast. So it's always about trying to generate new interest in it. But the short answer is probably about 4 years to build the core of it. And then I've sort of been trying to figure out how to get people excited about it and grow it. I've got some new ideas. This new resource that I'm building, which will be an additional thing to support it and help expand it and take it even further, but also be something that people can use if they don't join Fast. So there's lots of stuff. But anyway, hopefully that's the answer to that. Let's see. All right. Am I still only halfway through every time I feel like I'm making progress, I scroll down and there's no, let me see. Sorry for the drinking. It's been hour and 50 minutes before my first sip. So I'm back to my old ways. Roland asks, what's the best way to build the theme in your script? So theme is like a theme. You can think of theme almost like an invisible mesh that surrounds your project. Every single thing in your story has to serve your theme, or if it doesn't, then you're actually going to be presenting a different theme. So what we do in Fast anyway is we don't build themes specifically. We identify what kind of themes you are interested in, and then we grow story organically out of that. So it's going to change as we go along, because what I found along the way is that if you nail down a theme and you say, this is what I want my movie to be about, and you stick to that, and you stick to that all the way through the whole thing, you end up writing something that you're no longer passionate about. Because if you don't grow through the writing of your own story, if your theme doesn't evolve from what it originally started out to be, you probably haven't gone far enough. You probably created a surface level project. So I don't specifically talk about theme. Well, I sort of do, but I don't focus on theme. I let theme evolve. So we sort of figure out what your theme or your thematic idea, or for me, it's not so much about theme either, because your movie might not be about a theme. Theme might be an effect of your story rather than a driver of your story. You may be more driven by your fascination with an idea. Let's say you're fascinated by robots or robots playing chess. And so you make a robots playing chess movie. Well, what the movie's about and what everything has to serve is that notion of robots playing chess. You're not necessarily telling a thematic story. There will be a theme. It's automatic. It happens whether you deliberately put it in there or whether you don't think about it and it just sort of comes across. So that's why I say it's this invisible mesh around your whole story. But so I don't know the best way for anything. The best way for you may be different to the best way for me. But the way that I believe, the process-driven way, is to figure out what your motivation is, what's driving you, and then to grow your story organically out of that through the story development process. The theme will naturally grow as you go along. If you want to be more specific about your theme, when we do get into the rewrite process, the big picture of your story is either your theme or whatever that, robot chess thing is, that fascination thing that your story, that everything has to serve, that big picture of your story. So we do address it a little bit at that point. So we refine it, but I believe you should do that only after you've written that first draft. So you have room to experience your story, to let the theme grow organically. I keep doing that. To grow organically and naturally as part of the creative process. So I really believe that it's a push-pull, right? So it's you can try to put it in there, and then you can see where the story goes, and then reassess and reevaluate. But at the end, you're going to want to make sure that everything serves what ultimately your story is about. And so you will have to identify it, or at least identify what you think it is, or be able to put your hands on what effect it has had. But that's not necessarily, it's not necessarily going to be something that you're doing deliberately and consciously doing. To me, that's not the best way to go about it. So hopefully that makes sense. Have some water. Okay. Let's see. Survive. Victoria says, my writing instructor told me if you had to write for a living, you'll write. Survival is a cure for writer's block. I have to think about that one. I would argue with that, actually. I don't think that's true. I suppose if somebody's waiting on your writing in order to give you a paycheck, and you have to write for that. Yeah, I guess that the point is you're not going to let writer's block get in your way, but you might hand in less than exemplary pages. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. I think that's a little, that's not the way I would put it, but yeah, fair enough. Everybody has ideas on that stuff. Let's see. Let's see. How important is title selling screenplay? Deb has a follow-up to Rich when he asked about your title. Is the one thing to keep in mind is that your title can very easily be changed. If someone buys your script, they buy the rights to your project, so they can do whatever they want to with it. They can change the character, they can change the setting, they can change any of the dialogue. They can cut out your absolutely favorite scene in the whole world, the one that you've been dreaming of since you were 10. And most certainly they can change your title. So what you want with the title is you really want to find a title that is going to engage someone's imagination and really capture what it is you're trying to convey in your story. It's all about putting the promises, putting the imagination in the reader's mind. You want to find the ideas that are going to do that so that your script can surpass those expectations. That's really kind of the key to all that stuff. So, okay. Boston Joe says, I was going to name my script Bonfire of the Vanities. I think that's just a joke. I hope that's just a joke. If not, hey, give it a shot and see what happens. I think that would be two on that. Let's see. Dimitri, I was thinking about reading that one-page synopsis. We'll do that. We'll do that at some point. There are some challenges in that one-page synopsis. You're gonna go, why did he have to read it out? Let's see. Google. Tobias says he always Googles to see if the title is already in use. You can also, I would always go on to IMDb, check out IMDb and see if the title's on there, because that'll give you a better sense of if it is, because Google might pull stuff that's like not really anywhere. If let's say some little company or let's say some little micro budget crew made some movie and they called it whatever title you want to give to yours, but they only had a reach of 1,000, 10,000 people, whatever. You could probably use that title as well. So if you use IMDb, it'll give you a sense of how popular the film was and how widely known that title is. So, I'm going to skip over the stuff about that synopsis, guys. So, I will read it at some point. You haven't noticed any stuttering on the stream. Has anybody, when I do that, does it ever go? Anyway, that was the problem that we had before. So, If it's anyway, for me on my end, I keep seeing it from time to time. So let's see, content management, like a research team, content management. I do that. So Deb, if your comment, there it's stuttering as I was talking about, and then it stopped. Anyway, like a research team, content management. So Deb, if you are interested in volunteering or anything, please let me know. Send an email to thescreenwritingshow@gmail.com, and I will. I'll give you more information or whatever we can discuss. Let's see. Course instruction as well. Cool. Well, that could help. Happy to assist. If anyone who's happy to assist, it's so funny. Like the delay is always like half an hour or so. By the time I ask you a question, and then like by the time I get to the comments, it's like we'll be talking about the stuttering visual thing half an hour from now. They'll be like, "What are they talking about?" That's on me, by the way. I'm not blaming any of you guys. But anyone who is interested in helping out or whatever, please email me, because it is something that I would love. I would love to build all this significantly beyond what you see right now. And we know for the past 7 episodes already, it's me talking with this backdrop for like 3 hours, which I'm glad you guys keep coming back, and I'm pleased that you're enjoying it. I still want to make it more entertaining and more visual and more. You walk away with practical, give you some handouts, maybe even during these shows, stuff like that. So anyway, so the more help, more people can help, the better. Don't have any money to pay anybody at the moment, but who knows if this all turns into something and we can build a corporate profit source. maybe there's something at some point. Let's see. Okay. Jeff, you worked with Roger. I didn't work with Roger Corman. I can't even remember. They changed the titles. Speaking of changing titles, Tobias asked, so I worked on a movie called Carnosaur 2 briefly. I'm pretty sure I worked on that one. I worked on 5 different projects in a 6-month span. I can't remember. One was like, they all had these cheesy titles, like what dream, I honestly can't remember. They were like dream something, or I could tell you who was in them, but I don't want to, because there were some there's pretty messed up things that happened on that set, on one of the sets. Anyway, I don't honestly remember the names of the titles. It was like Where Evil Lies or something like that. It's that kind of thing, you know. I'll have to look it up. I don't even think I'm listed on IMDb for them. I tried looking and I couldn't even find the projects. So the other thing is possible that they made some and they didn't distribute them, although I can't imagine they wouldn't. Anyway. We'd have to do we can get whoever volunteers to do some research. You can research that for me. I'll give you some details and we can find them and talk about it in a future episode. Let's see. Oh, we're talking about ideas. Yes. Ideas are fluffy. Here you go. Got to pop a Dimitri comment on there. Ideas are fluffy and ever changing. It'll be hard to steal an idea when the initial idea will sprawl out and become a totally different thing down the line. That is absolutely true. And this is the other thing that I've noticed watching people go through fast is like people start with one idea and they always invariably talk about how they ended up with something completely different and way beyond anything that they could have even imagined at the beginning. So it's almost like if your idea does not grow through the writing process, that idea is probably not ready for market anyway. Right? Because it's probably too simplistic, probably, not taking the idea itself far enough. So anyway, let's see. They're talking about, I should, no, we won't. I actually have it up on the screen, guys, but I won't put it up right now because I don't really want to go into it unless we actually go into it. Okay, Rich, we connected a few years ago. Awesome. Cool. Let's see. Rich, I remember a guy named Rich years ago. Anyway, email me and we can try to reconnect if we can. Let's see. If you discover a new direction for your story after you write a first draft, but it requires you to start from scratch, do you stick with the original concept or continue with the new idea? So this is a problem that I would say 80-90% of people who go through FAST experience, because the focus phase of FAST is the story development process. And so people start out with an idea, or they sign up because they have this movie they want to write. And then as they start going through the story development process, we start adding to it and we start giving it shape and we start building it, and they start to see maybe the thinness of the original idea and it grows into something else. But that other thing that it grew into is not necessarily what they wanted to do, but along the way they find a new idea or something that is maybe more in line with where they want to go. So they stop everything and they go back and they start to develop that project. The problem is when you go back and you start to develop that project, you end up running into a lot of the same problems where you start with an idea, and as you start to grow and it turns into something a bit different, then it's not the idea you had that you loved at the beginning. And so you start to fall out of love with that idea and you come up with some new idea and you scrap it all and you start again. So what I always tell people in FAST, and I don't know, Ryan, if you're in FAST or not, but I don't think so. I don't recognize the name anyway. Unless you're using a pseudonym, which happens. If what I tell people with FAST is what you want to do is you want to take an idea all the way through the entire process. Most people who start FAST, and therefore I'm going to go out on a limb and say most people who sit down to start trying to write a screenplay start because they want to see this idea made into a movie. And that is absolutely a fine driver. And that can get you far into the process. But the reality is your story is going to change and evolve over time until this stuff, all this stuff, becomes second nature to you. Until that point at which you can work at a mastery level intuitively, where any idea that pops in your head, you just go, right, and flesh it out into a story quickly. That's why it's called fast screenplay. And until you can do that fast, until you can do that quickly, you're always going to take so much time going through that your ideas are going to change and evolve and morph into something else. So what I believe and what I teach is learn the whole process. Go all the way through the whole process. Get to the point where the process itself is second nature to you. Get to the point where the focus phase, the story development part of your process, if you have an idea, you can turn that idea into a fully fleshed out, compelling, detailed, emotional roller coaster ride of a story in a couple of days or a couple of hours or a couple of weeks at worst, right? It takes about 2 months to go through the focus phase in fast screenplay if you do it at the recommended pace. That's because you're learning the process. You will never do it that slowly again if I have my way, right? If you do it the way I've suggested and designed it. Now, if you're not doing fast, if you're doing it on your own, you're still going to run into that same problem. As you learn new things, as you read stuff or watch videos or what have you online, and you go, oh, I didn't think about pacing, or I didn't think about suspense or tension or subplots or subtext or symbols and metaphors or dialogue or all, right? As you learn new things, it makes you think about your story differently. Oh, you know what? I should start again on a new project. That's what I did. When I first started writing, I had this great idea for a movie. I start writing, I get 34 pages into a project and I'd be like, I think I have a better idea. I'd scrap it and I'd start a new project. I'd get 30, 40 pages into it, have a new, better idea. So I'd scrap it and I'd start a new project. You get really good at starting projects, but you suck at finishing projects. You don't develop the skill of developing a whole project. You don't develop the skill of writing that project and learning how to write intuitively. You don't develop the skill of learning how to rewrite, how to take a draft that is not all the things that you wanted it to be and turn it into a draft that is all the things you want it to be. That is a skill set. That, I would argue, is the skill set. Rewriting. I would argue that the strengthen phase, the strengthen and tweak phases together, that part of the writing process is where the superpower comes from. If you're able to take a mediocre draft and turn it into an extraordinary draft, you will get paid to be a screenwriter. This is the skill that is missing. This is the skill that is needed. Anyone can take some random idea and fill some pages with it. But to fill some pages we can actually go out and turn into something, that's the skill set. So to go back to your question, if you discover that you need to start over from scratch, it really depends on how well you know the process. It depends on if you've been through this whole process. Have you not just been through the writing and rewriting and polishing process? Have you been through the testing and the alignment and figuring out how your work lands with the reader and adjust it so that it lands the way you want it to land? So you're getting exactly the reactions you want to get from your project, and you know exactly how your project is going to connect with its ideal producer. If you know how to do that stuff, if you've done this enough times and you've gotten really good and you've focused on each of those parts of the process and you've made that stuff intuitive, well then, yes, you could absolutely start from scratch. When you get to that point, you go, oh, nope, this is not where I want it to be, but I know exactly how to get to where I want it to be. That becomes part of the process itself as well. The thing that I struggle to make writers understand is that all that time you spend on going in the wrong direction, that's not wasted time. That's part of the journey to find your project. Writing is a process of discovery. Writing is the process of discovery. It's not just the sitting down and typing. That's called typing, right? So writing is the whole thing. It's the figuring out what you want to say, fleshing it out, turning it into something, getting that draft on the page, going through and picking it around, going, this is not working. I need this. I need this. I need to understand that I got the 6 levels of your screenplay. We refine it, we polish it, we tweak the words on the page, we make sure it pops so that when the reader picks it up, they can't put it down. That whole thing is the process, because it's the job of the writer is to take the idea that's in your head and put that idea in your reader's head to give them the visceral cinematic experience that they would see on a screen by simply reading your words on the page, right? So going down that wrong alley, writing a draft that is not what you wanted it to be, sticking with an original concept versus going to a new concept, that decision is part of that discovery process. So there's no specific right answer, but I would generally say that it's going to depend upon where you are in your writing journey, how well you know and understand the process. If you're new to this, I would say keep going with your project until you understand the entire process. If you've been doing this a while, then you're probably not going to be asking me this question anyway, because you already know that would be the answer. So if you have the skills and you're able to do that, then you don't need to know that, right? Because you already know. Does that make sense? So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. Thanks for the question though. That was a good one. Memchem says, I've written 40 or so pages as a first draft and was wondering, since some of the scenes, many don't contain dialogue, how should I account for the length of the script? So if you have a largely action-based screen, let's say you've got a car chase or something, or maybe it's just 2 people, maybe one doesn't speak or something like that. What you can do is you can break it up. If you imagine how sparsely written a page with dialogue would be, there might be a chunk of dialogue here, there might be a chunk of dialogue here, some more description, right? Well, you can break up your action description into short and long paragraphs as well, so that maybe you have a 1-word paragraph. So you're breaking up some of that space, and so you're creating you're designing the page itself so that it has that same kind of flow. We'll get into some more of that when we start talking about, this is partly what I wanted to talk about with the secret language of screenplay. So, but if you've written a 40 or so page draft and you think that's going to be a feature length project, I don't necessarily think so. I don't know that I've ever seen a 40 page even treatment that would that would be fleshed out to a feature length movie. But anyway, I don't know. So we'll see. hopefully that helps anyway on some level. Let me know. Let's see. Okay. Craig, did you want me to read that premise? I'm going to leave that for the benefit of the chatters. How's that? Dimitri says, seems like everyone's writing a sci-fi. It needs a comeback like the Western, low budget, tightly structured and paced. I'm a big fan of sci-fi, but that's not the only thing that I would make. So I think I mentioned it in a previous episode of the show. The reason I would start with indie low budget sci-fi is because I believe there's what I call smart sci-fi, is because I believe there is a market that craves that kind of content. And I believe that because I'm in that market myself. I crave that kind of stuff that's got sort of a positive bent on it, but sort of hard science kind of, not fantasy and not aliens, and just like plays with scientific ideas or what the future could possibly be, that kind of stuff. But I believe there is a market for movies whose ideas are engaging and compelling enough that audiences would overlook the budgetary limitations. And because of that, I think that's a good way to start to build a larger film studio. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. They're asking each other their favorite directors and kind of westerns and stuff like that. I'm going to skip through some of that stuff. Dimitri says, who needs TED Talk when we have Jeff Talk now? 3 hours worth every week. Well, thank you, I guess. I'm not sure. It's a backhanded compliment. Let's see. What's a good email to send a note about volunteering? So it's thescreenwritingshow, all one word, at gmail.com. You might have asked me that question before I answered it earlier because I'm on a bit of a delay here, but I can't say it enough. And I still don't have a little lower third for this, but I'll create one for next week and I'll pop it up, and I'll have a little thing that says Jeff Ballo, and I'll have a little thing that says the Screenwriting Show, at the Screenwriting Show, just like the title of this thing, at gmail.com. That's the place to send all the stuff related to this show. That way I can keep it separate from all the other stuff. And fast people can contact me through the fast thing, and essential people can contact me through the essential thing, and all that kind of stuff. So let's see. They're talking about John Ford. Yes, agree. He's great. We've come to that cool part of the show, people watching the replay later, where Jeff reads the comments. It's so boring. Every time I like watch one of these things back, I get to this point where I'm like, I'm going, oh man, I need like a little, I need some little stinger or something where I can be like, I'm going to read comments for a second and click it, and something dazzling will happen and keep you guys entertained. Let's see. And by the way, thank you, Desi. I will get to that, your super chat shortly. I appreciate that. I will make sure to get to it before the time is over, if I'm too far behind on the chat here. Let's see. So let's see. Robot. They're telling robot stories. See all the fun you can have in the chat. If you're watching this as a replay, just think about how much joy your life would have if you were participating live here. I could highlight your comment. I could put it up on the screen. I can answer a comment that you made half an hour ago, and you're scratching your head wondering, what's he talking about? As I'm scratching my head wondering what you're talking about. Let's see. Okay. We're going through ideas and stuff. Gabriella says, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the videos you have uploaded with info about the first steps to reach out to an agent and producer. So I'm going to pop this up there just to say thanks for your comment, Gabriella. I don't think I've seen your name here before. Welcome. But I also want to emphasize, when you reach out to agents and managers, that you always want to make sure that you are going to be bringing them value. Most writers look at agents and managers as, they will help me get what I want. if you look at agents and managers like, how can I help them get what they want? It's going to change the dynamic of the relationship. You're going to want to make sure that you have enough sample material that when they reach out to people on your behalf, they will feel like, hey, I've got someone special. They feel like they're looking good because of who they're representing now. That kind of dynamic is going to make all the difference. So writers always want to reach out to that agent manager too soon, in my opinion. So if you sort of take that general idea on board, I believe it can get you further faster. Anyway, I think often, frequently, sometimes, maybe. Let's see. So you guys are talking about some sci-fi ideas, I think, and as I'm skimming through, I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about or why Elon Musk came into the conversation. Scientists. Oh, okay. These are premises. Did I ask for premises, or are you guys sharing them with each other? Because I don't want to skip over these if I did ask for them and I forgot that I asked for them. I don't think so. But anyway, let's see. So I need to have a drink. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder, Tobias. Appreciate it. Geez, 1 hour without drinking. I think I went almost 2, but here we go. Let's see. Jay says, I've noticed that movies and TV series work differently with plot. For example, I've noticed that TV series are very subplot heavy while movies are very plot heavy. What is your opinion on this? Well, so here's the thing. A TV series, you always have to remember, a TV series is not about this 1 hour or 2 hours of what you're watching. A TV series is about an ongoing, overarching story. And to be able to maintain an audience's interest and keep keep pulling them dramatically into your story, you're going to want to be engaging them with new ideas, new scenes, new dilemmas, new frustrations, new opportunities, all the ups and downs and push and pull of all the different kinds of stories. So because of that, TV is generally going to have more characters doing more different things. And if you have an overarching story, oftentimes you're going to be taking little forward progress, small parts of transition in a given episode out of an overarching change or trajectory that the season would do, or that the whole series would do. So because you're only going in sort of these smaller increments, you're going to want other subplots. They're generally not subplots. They're generally B and C storylines. So the way TV generally works is you have your A storyline, which is like the main story of that episode. Then you have a B storyline, which might not even be attached to the A storyline at all. They might not intersect or cross or have any scenes together in the entire episode, maybe even the entire season. But whatever this character is doing in the B storyline may have an impact upon the A storyline character, maybe later on down the road, what have you. So you're always going to want those kinds of that variety and that complexity in a TV show so that you can sustain an engaging narrative over multiple episodes, over 6 or 10 or 13 or 26 episodes in a whole season, right? So because of that, TV is structured a little bit differently. For a movie is an hour and a half, 2 hours of a self-contained story. Everything you need in that story to understand the transformation, to understand the change, to see the nuance of the world, or whatever it is that the writer or the filmmakers are trying to convey, has to happen within that story. So all the pieces of the puzzle have to be within that story as well. In TV, you can get away with introducing some puzzle pieces that you don't quite know how they're going to snap together until later on. You go, we had that puzzle piece, and maybe we could snap those two over here. Not everything has to be entirely self-contained on a TV show, but in a movie, and again, this is why for FAST, you go through the movie writing process, the feature film writing process, because it has to be self-contained. All of those skills and techniques and all that is entirely applicable to TV as well. And if you want to write TV, you can certainly, this is the process you're going to use for TV writing as well. But by going through as a self-contained movie story, we get to make sure at the end that there's no stray puzzle piece here. There's nothing here that isn't part of this narrative. And that's largely what the difference is between the two. So the main story in a movie needs to be the main story in the movie, because when we go to a movie, we're trying to figure out, like anything, TV or movie, but when we go to the cinema or watch it on Netflix or whatever, we're watching the movie trying to think what's important here. What is this story? Why do I care? That thing happened to that person. Oh, now they're doing this thing. Do I want to know why or why? Right? Maybe we don't think about it consciously. Maybe we're just drawn into it. But the way we're going to do that typically is through a central storyline. You may have subplots which will impact the main story somewhere within this self-contained story. Now there are, cinematic universe, Avengers and Marvel and trilogies and stuff like that you're going to have elements that come into play in other episodes. But the principle stands where the movie as a movie needs to work as a movie. It has to be self-contained in order for it to be satisfying for the audience. So that's kind of what I would say about that. Hopefully that makes sense. Does that answer your question, or is that satisfactory? Okay. Let's see. Scrutinize out loud. You're talking about Dimitri's talking about his synopsis. I will. Not today. I will. I don't have time today. I think maybe I'll tell you what, since we're going to be doing another one of these next week of just talk through. And since we're at 25 viewers at the moment, 24, somebody just left. So we're not this isn't sort of expanding at the moment. I'll go ahead and do it next week, because I think it's core people who are here, with some new faces. I hope the new faces will keep coming back, but, since the numbers are no higher, I wonder who's left. Anyway, we will, how about we try to talk about, we'll go through the synopsis next week, regardless. I'll spend a half an hour or so going through it, and I'll make some points that I may subsequently again make in an episode specifically about writing style and all that. Anyway, okay, so skipping through, Jay asks another question: when adapting novel or movie or TV script, how much of a novel content can you adapt before they become unusable or impractical in the movie sense? Sorry, I'm confused by the question. When adapting a novel to movie or TV script, how much of a novel content can you adapt before they become unusable or impractical? So a novel is going to immerse into all the senses generally. And a movie is what you see and hear on screen. So unless the novel is written in a sort of cinematic style where it's very visual and it's very dramatic, and a lot of novels these days are sort of written more how you would experience a movie than sort of novel experience. Adapting a novel is a very specific thing. So first of all, if you don't have rights to the novel, don't even bother adapting it, because you need rights you need adaptation rights to adapt a novel. Whoever owns the novel owns the rights to adapt it. But if you got the rights, or if adaptation is something that you want to do, it's all about figuring out how to tell this novel story in cinema form. So telling a novel story in cinema form is going to require taking out certain scenes or adjusting things in a certain way, or maybe retelling something in a cinematic way that evokes the feeling of the book that maybe wasn't in the book, or that isn't exactly how the book played out, because the cinematic experience that won't play out as a cinematic experience. That's an immersive novel emotional experience, sensory experience, rather than the cinema experience. So adapting is a whole thing. I might try to see if I can do an episode on adaptation at some point in the future, but Just know that it's probably not going to be something I'm going to do right away, simply because I believe that it's in a writer's best interest to learn the skill of developing original content, because A, there's never going to be any end to it. You will always be able to create new original content. B, we need original content. Yes, it's true that most movies get made because somebody licensed a property, but to get that work, to do that adaptation in the first place, you're going to need to be able to demonstrate that you have the skill of screenwriting, and that means you're going to need some probably original content in the first place. So developing that initially is kind of the key. So all right, so I'm going to, Gabriella, I'm going to just throw this up there so you know I didn't ignore it. The steps to get an agent are to reach out to them and contact them. The actual steps to get an agent are write at least 3 projects, at least 3 that are extraordinary before you reach out to them. Develop the skill first. Don't reach out to an agent first. When you are ready to reach out to an agent, ideally get an introduction. Someone who is with the agency or who knows someone at the agency, or a producer or a filmmaker who's represented by the agency, something like that. Get them to read your work and recommend you. You do not want to go in blind. They will not read your empty submission, your unsolicited submission. So you want to ideally, you want to get recommended to an agency. The only way that's going to happen is if you've got some project that is dazzling to someone already. That's not the kind of advice people want to hear, because they want to think, oh, look them up on, literary-agents.com or whatever it is. I don't know if that's a real thing. But you can find them. Go to the Writers Guild and you can get a list of WGA signatory literary agents or what have you. And you can reach out and contact them, but most of them will not read anything. So the actual step to get an agent is to get a recommendation from someone. And that means developing a craft long before you even attempt. Because remember, agents are not about an agent. You don't want an agent so they work on your behalf. That's what everyone thinks they want an agent for. But you want an agent so they can represent you. The agent is your representation. You need to have something to represent first. Hope that makes sense. And I hope I'm not being dismissive. Maybe you are in that position. Maybe you've already written stuff and you are actually ready for an agent. That's totally cool. Generally speaking, this is the advice that I would be giving. Let's see. I'm going to keep reading. I'm skimming a little bit because I'm weary of time. I want to highlight Desi Rabbit. Thank you for that. $10 super chat. Appreciate it. Every dollar goes right back into it. So every dollar you guys send my way will go back to help you in some way. Even if it's just keeping the lights on. By the way, I'm shocked that we have not had any power out. I've just jinxed it for sure. But we had all morning long, we had internet, no internet, internet, no internet. I was sure this was going to cut out. So even if it were to cut out now because I've jinxed it, that's 2.5 hours. That's not bad with internet being up the whole time. So for all of you guys who are here, lucky you. You're my lucky charms. You guys have to come back each week because I need to make sure that we don't run out of the internet. Let's see. Okay. We're still writing the story. I love that you guys are writing the story. There's got to be a way. I got to have a way of like color coding it if you're writing the story so that I know which ones I should look at for trying to find questions and answers and stuff. They could, whenever I see the phrase, they could pray and bow down to their utopian god, I know we're off into some form of sci-fi that is not necessarily what I mean by the smart sci-fi, which is not to say that that wouldn't be smart. Just idea-based sci-fi. Anyway, let's see. Now we're talking about the 90s and how great the 90s were. Come on, guys. You know what the best time is in all of humanity? All of humanity. It's right now, the 2020s. 2020 itself, maybe not the best year, but man, we have so much opportunity. We can do things today that I was around in the 90s. I was an actor in the 90s. I'm telling you right now, we have so much more opportunity today than we ever had back then. And we had plenty of opportunity back then. But today it's like off the charts. Literally everyone who is in this room right now, if you put your mind to it and you develop your skill and your craft, you can do this. Literally every single one. That's how much opportunity there is, in my opinion. So the question is, who's going to? Now is the time. There is no better time. This is how Jeff 1 came to be. Yes. We'll get to Jeff 1 next week. For those who don't know, as they've been writing their story in this comment thread here, they did that in a previous, maybe 2 weeks ago, was it? Where they then, or was it last week, where they sent a they created a story and then Dimitri wrote a synopsis, a 1-page synopsis, initially a 3-page synopsis and then a 1-page synopsis of what that story was that they had put in the chat box there. And next week I will be going through that synopsis and you can see what they came up with. And there will be lessons to be had. So, all right. Let's see. We're talking about Truman Show. We're talking about, okay. So let's see. Jay has a follow-up to, if subplot is not a B or C storyline, then what is the difference between them? I've always thought they were the same, but maybe I've misunderstood them. So, they can be. So ABC storyline in a TV show, they are each their own, independent narrative, generally speaking. So a subplot is when you have a parallel or partial story that will impact or affect that main storyline in some direct way. So for example, a subplot might be, you've got a story of a guy who's committing a bank heist. Well, you may have a subplot story of the security guard who lost his keys and is trying to get back in before they get out of the bank vault. I don't know, whatever, right? So that would be a subplot because it is directly an offshoot of the main plot. Without the main plot, the subplot doesn't exist. There's no point in the subplot because the subplot is in answer to or because of or a direct result of the main storyline. ABC storylines, like in TV, are their own distinctive narratives. So you have the brother and father who are building a boat. You have the girlfriend and the sister who are, I don't know, whatever. I don't know, programming code for a new robot, whatever, right? So the third storyline is some other thing. And those three, they may impact each other. Like they may cross over. They may have some, some interaction with each other, but they're not because of or a result of those other plots. Does that make sense? So, so there's push and pull, like there's some amorphousness to the definitions, because technically they might be subplots, or in a movie you may have an A and B and C plot in a movie, because you've, like a story like Pulp Fiction, for example, has an A, B, and a C story, and that they do impact upon the other, but they're not about each other, right? So they're not connected in that way. So when you think of your feature film story and you think of your main story, what is the story that's unfolding? One of the ways to find subplots is going to be to look at what are some of the other things going on as a result of the story, or that are happening in parallel to the story, but will affect or impact that main storyline. Maybe you have a whole separate story of a character driving in a car, who's late for work, blah, blah, blah. And you have this character who's, walking the kid home from school. And those two stories have nothing to do with each other. But then at some point, this car crashes into a tree and it causes whatever impacts that other storyline, which is your main storyline. Well, it turns out that was a subplot, right? So because it's impacting the other storyline, the reason we're telling it is to have that impact on the other story. So hopefully that makes sense. I probably partially was helpful and partially botched the description of that, but I'll put a little thought into it for the subplot episode, and we'll have a much better description of of that kind of a thing. So hopefully that helps and makes sense. You know what, Creme Coakley? I'm glad you found me too, and I'm glad I found you. Well, I didn't find you, but you found me, and let's get to know each other. Let's become a part of this thing. There is much more to be had here, not just on this show, but on this channel. By the way, for those of you who are, how do you guys find a live stream show like this? I'm always curious. Like, I'm not quite sure how the live stream thing works. We started doing this a couple months ago, and I don't know how people find it. I don't know if it shows up somewhere on YouTube. I don't know. So it's great to see new people. But if you're new to me and to my channel, quick background. And for those of you who've already heard it before, we're 2.5 hours into this. I can take a couple of seconds to do this. I spent nearly 20 years looking for material to produce, couldn't find anything, started teaching screenwriting. Well, I started teaching screenwriting at the beginning of it when I couldn't find anything to produce, and went way down this rabbit hole. And so I teach screenwriting from the producer's perspective, from as someone who has reviewed 30,000 project submissions and read about 7,000 screenplays and went 99% of these are unusable. Like 99.9%, 1 in 1,000 would be usable by me, someone who submitted something to me, and only about 1 out of 100 would be usable by any producer. And so I've got very frustrated that writers are not writing material producers can actually use. You have ideas that are unique to you. You have a unique window on the world. You see things, you've experienced things, you've dreamt things that give you an imagination that only you can have. That's going to create stories in your mind that are unique to you. If you don't tell your stories, we will never know those stories. It will be impossible for anyone else to ever tell those stories. So I would like to help you tell those stories, in part because if I can get you telling all those stories, we can actually go out and build an indie film studio that produces many, many films each year with production teams all around the world. And we can maybe make a positive impact on the world because I have a non-dystopian, positive, optimistic, maybe techno-optimist future of vision of the future. So anyway, that was a terribly botched quick recap of who I am, but hopefully that gives you some sense. I'm about 2 hours and 40 minutes into this, so I can be forgiven for not being entirely coherent, but I do try my best, and I hope to entertain you along the way as well. So, and I do this each week. So Thursdays at 2 p.m. Los Angeles time, I turn this thing on. We go for about 3 hours. I have a kind of a hard out at 5 local time. So I leave the replays up. I'm only going to be leaving the replays up for about 4 weeks at some point. So some of those early ones will be taken off. And as the new ones come on and we do a deep dive in each episode, we're going to, as we do the deep dive in each episode, we're going to have those on for a more limited time to try to get people to join us live or near to live to watch things sort of soon after, try to build up the community here. Anyway, hopefully that helps. Let's see. What is John Smith says, what is your favorite recent movie and why? I don't have a favorite recent movie. I have not had too much chance to watch films, to be honest with you. So one of the challenges that I have is I would love to be making more video content, like short video content, short, punchy, educational. I have ideas for this channel to just absolutely create a ton of value for you guys. I don't have the time to make those videos. And so one of the reasons I'm doing this crazy long 3-hour talk fest here is because I can carve out 3 hours each week and just go, well, I'm going to do what I can in that 3 hours. Then I can spend the rest of my time trying to do all the other work. So there's lots of admin work, just keeping the system going, teaching writers, interacting with the people along the way. People struggle, they ask questions, whatever, I help them. If you send me an email for help with just about anything, I will respond and help you. And sometimes with these very long people go, geez, I don't have time to read all this. I just want a simple answer. But I want to help writers. And so I'm trying to build this whole thing, trying to lay the foundations for the indie film studio. I'm trying to help writers go through a process so that at the end, they will have the skills, will be able to actually make films with those writers. And so building that whole thing is a big challenge. I've got a little toddler and he takes up a fair bit of time now. And I would not have it any other way. He's my priority, guys. Sorry about that. Shane said earlier how like the motivation has changed as time has gone on. And I found that my own motivation has changed as well. I want to build what I want to build now for him and for a future world that he can have and enjoy and appreciate. And that's good and has a habitable earth and all that stuff. So all these things are competing for time. And so that's the biggest challenge that I have at the moment. So the idea of watching a movie or watching lots of movies is pipe dream. It's something that I would love to be able to do more of. Don't necessarily have that much time. I know that is not a very happy answer. What we do watch these days, a lot of, are shows on Netflix. Because you can watch an episode, you can get like about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at night. There's a 2.5 hour movie. That thing's not getting watched anytime soon, but maybe we can watch an hour of an episode of a Netflix show or something. And Netflix has all the best shows. The Queen's Gambit is fantastic. Everyone should watch that. So stuff like that, or Dark was great. If you watch that, what's the other one we watched? Lupin is fantastic. A French show. Anyway, but that should not give any, that I don't believe that what I watch, what I like should in any way, affect this, because at the end of the day, I want to help writers write what they want to write. So if you're new here, you probably haven't heard me say yet that I don't do horror. I'm not interested in making horror films. But if a writer wanted to learn how to make the best horror films ever written, I would absolutely do everything in my power to help that person do that. Because if that's their passion, then helping them capture their voice is what I'm all about. So anyway, the point being, don't worry too much about what I would want to make or what I'm watching or that kind of stuff as a determination of whether or not there's value here. You can be curious for sure. But there you go. That's my response. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So you guys are talking about, hi, Remo. Yeah, so they're talking about subplots. Okay, so I might be catching up. Tobias says, how many subplots can you have in a screenplay? I don't know that you're wanting to cram too many in there. It's going to depend on the story. I feel like every story is unique. So there's no how many of this can you have or what's the right way to do that. Everything is so subjective. And at the end of the day, it's what is your story about? What is the experience you're trying to give to your audience? And how are you delivering that experience to your audience? If you want a slow, languishing sort of story that takes characters gently through a single character's point of view, you're not going to want any subplots, maybe. But if you want to have, let's say, 10 different opinions on the same situation, you might want 10 different subplots. Just keep in mind, if it's a 2-hour story or hour-and-a-half story, if you have 10 subplots, you're going to need to give time to each of those subplots, which means each of those subplots is going to get less character development and less actual development. It's going to be more surface level than if you had enough time to really explore something. You know, there's movies like Love Actually or something, these kinds of stories that have multiple narratives going through that always get criticism for being like unrealistic or like it's hard to appreciate them because they're not the kinds of stories that you would want to tell. Well, at the end of the day, that those stories maybe don't mean anything, or the stories aren't very valuable, or what have you. Well, at the end of the day, if the story is, if you have all those different little mini narratives that you're trying to tell in your story, then you're not able to go too deep into any one of those stories, and you end up having to do something that's a little more surface level. So the point of a story like that is the variety. It's not about the depth of it. It is about the variety of it. So you have to sort of understand what your story is trying to be and how you're going to go about trying to, how you're going to go about trying to achieve that. So hopefully that makes sense. Jeff, what is the secret? The key to writing great supporting characters. We'll get to that in an upcoming character episode. All right, let's see. Remo says you're subscribed and you get warnings. So I was asking how you guys find out about it. Fantastic. Good stuff. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, then you get notified when we go live. You might even get that little notice that I sent out earlier that we're having internet problems. It's probably good to know those kinds of things. Yes, you're welcome, Jay, about the subplots. Let's see. John said a reminder for the live shows. Fantastic. I love that you guys are interested in this stuff, and happy to be here for you. Let's see. This came recommended since you watch related channels. There you go. Fantastic. Thanks, Deb. Debbie. Sorry, didn't mean to. Anyway, I always want to try to respect everybody's names. Sometimes, the username isn't. Anyway, Remo says, is this streaming public? I could promote it in my social media. If it is, yes, you can promote it in your social media. Everyone can promote this in their social media, as far as I know. Is it? Stream settings. Let me see. Yeah, I don't know. How do I find that out? If you can tell me how to find out if my stream is public or not, I will tell you if it's public. And if it's not, I will make sure it is for next week. So if you know the answer to that and you can help me with it, send me an email at thescreenwritingshow@gmail.com. All right. Let's see. Okay. I have to feature that one. If you ever were in a comic book, Jeff's alter ego could be named the Rambler. Okay, Dimitri, it's on. Okay, so hopefully I'm not rambling. Hopefully I'm actually dovetailing it all into a point that becomes something that you can capture, hold in your hand, and apply to your project. Hopefully. Not always. It's 3 hours long, guys. But hopefully for 80 to 90% of it at least. He dispatches the heroes by rambling for 3 hours straight. Right in the kisser. As a producer, by the way, that was a Honeymooners reference, Jackie Gleason. So, boy. Do I know my audience or what? Half the people here are like, what was that? As a producer, what are some things in a script you look for that indicate that to you that this script may be usable, or a script you believe can be passed on to another producer that can help them out? Well, so the only way someone is going to pass the project along or actually want to do this story in the script is if the whole thing is extraordinary. We're not going to say yes to a project or pass it on to somebody if there's a cool scene in it, but the rest of the story is meh, or the writing is pedestrian, but you had a really cool scene over here on page 25. Every single page, every single word on every single page needs to be top shelf. And the reason is partly because we want to have a great project and we're looking for viable material and all that. But secondly, and maybe more importantly, is if you send a project in that has major flaws or major story holes or simple things like formatting mistakes or grammar errors or that kind of stuff. Like, it's clear you haven't done the work to deliver something professional. Keep in mind, when you send a producer or production company or agent or manager or whomever, when you send them a script, you are literally saying to them, I believe these 100 pages or 100 and whatever the pages you got, these pages are worthy of a multi-million-dollar investment. If you can't say that, if you don't know that, I would argue you should not be sending that project in. Because if I received that, and I have received thousands of exactly what I'm describing right now, projects that are like, this is nowhere near ready, then all you're doing is telling me this is not someone that I can go to. If, let's say I like your idea, and I've came across this problem many times. Let's say the idea is a really cool idea. And so I say, let me see your synopsis. And your synopsis is like, well, that's a pretty pedestrian way to tell this story. What I would do back in the day was I would still request the script so I could see maybe the writer isn't quite there, but the raw material is good, and maybe they could be coaxed to getting there. We could develop it into what it needs to be. And then you read the script and you're like, yeah, this is just nowhere near it. What happens is, for me, the producer production company, I immediately start thinking, well, how am I going to develop this into what I thought the potential project was from the initial pitch? I'm not going to come to you because you've sent me what you thought was your very best work that you thought was worthy of a multi-million-dollar investment. Even if we're making low budget projects, it's still, you're saying we should be able to spend a couple $1,000,000 of this at least. Like, if you're not aware of where it needs to be, then I can't come to you to fix it or improve it or turn it into something. And so unless that idea is like 1 in a million, and by the way, I've never come across that idea in any pitch I've ever gotten ever. But if it was that 1 in a million idea, that idea is so good, I'm dropping everything and I'm just going to myself write that project. Unless it's that, I'm going to have to go find someone else to develop your project, to turn your half-baked script into a viable production-ready page turner screenplay that we could actually go out and make a movie out of. How am I going to do that? I'm going to have to go to someone who I know has those skills, who's going to be expensive. I don't have the money to just randomly pay someone to develop a script. I can't just be pouring 50 grand over here and 30 grand over here and 80 grand over here to writers, hoping that they'll turn it into what I imagined its potential to be. There's no way to recoup that money. I can't write that money off, so I can't recoup unless it gets turned into a film. I can't write that off as a development expense. It's just a random development cost. So what do I do? So I can't go to you because you're not at that level to be able to do something with it. I can't go pay someone or hire someone to do it. So what do? I say no. I say, sorry, I got to keep looking. No, thanks. Not at this time. It's not right for us right now. So when you ask for like, what are the things that are in a script? What does it have to be? It has to be all of it. This has to be an extraordinary character, the extraordinary character has to be on an extraordinary journey. They have to, something interesting and engaging has to happen. It has to pull me through the emotional roller coaster of the experience. It has to be something that I want to watch, that I want to spend the next 5 years of my life making and selling. It has to be all that kind of stuff. And if it is that, and it's in, let's say it's a horror film, but it is all that, well, then I have some horror film producers that I know that I would go, hey, I got a really cool script that I think you're going to like. If it's a comedy or something that would be perfect for a comedy filmmaker, I got somebody that I would probably send something to. If it's at a higher budget level than I could make now, I have a couple places I could probably reach out to and say, I have an amazing project for you. But it has to be all that. It has to tick all those boxes. It has to be what I would call viable and production ready. Production ready, what I mean when I say production ready is this script could be produced right now without a single word changed. Most likely, we're going to make some changes. We're going to get some actors in. Some elements are going to change. The locations might change. Maybe somebody will think, oh, this scene's too whatever, and they'll want some changes, whatever. We will probably do some further development on it. But the script itself, as submitted, needs to be producible right now. And so what is that? That's all of it. Like I said earlier, I'm not sure if you're here for when I said that, but there's like 200 to 300 unique skills that I believe writers need to master to be at a professional level. It's everything. Is your suspense working? Is your pacing right? Are your characters authentic and original and compelling and engaging? Do we care about them? Are they, when they speak, their dialogue, does it sound realistic? Does it sound like something that would be right for them? Is it suitable to the story? Does it drive the narrative forward? There's hundreds of elements that we have to nail all these things down. And that's why I'm just this huge proponent of learn this whole entire process. I don't know. As asked, this kind of a question is almost looking for secrets. And I get the desire to do that. I totally get the desire to do that. But it's not really how it works. It's really, producers are not looking for something that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the surprise. I'm looking for the project that blows me away. The project that is the kind of thing that I'd want to make, the kind of thing that's right for me, at the budget level and with the resources that I have available to me, that's something that I could realistically, plausibly make, but that like goes beyond what my imagination would be. If I've got 100 story ideas in my head, I want to find that project that is even better than anything I dreamt up. And I know that's not a satisfying answer, but that is the answer. That's the real answer. And so it's not so much about finding the tricks or the secrets or the techniques. It really is about developing the overall skill and continuing to move forward. If you missed the beginning of this show, it's about keep moving forward. If you missed that part of it, that is the key to success with all this. We started out talking about inspiration and motivation. And if you're inspired by what I'm saying right now, you have to find a way to turn that into a daily motivation, because it's the consistent, ongoing daily action that's going to develop these skills. It's why my system is set up the way that it is, so that you immerse into a new skill each day. So you keep moving forward so that you grow as a writer, as a creative person, because there is no one right way to do things. It's about finding your voice, your originality, and turning that into something that blows me away and that I could actually say yes to. Not me specifically, a producer, any producer. You can find the producers that are aligned with you, that want to make the kinds of films you want to make. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, went off on a tangent there. Well, I don't know about that, but in your opinion, as a producer, do producers tend to support scripts that can be filmed more practically with practical effects? So I'm gonna skip that one, Jay, just because I think the other one, the answer to the other one, sort of hits on what my answer to that would be as well. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so let's see. I see share button. Okay, cool. So if the share button is up, that means it's public. Okay, hopefully. So that's true. So I'm just going to throw this up there real quick. We're just about past the end of my thing. When it comes to gore, what does the industry consider a no-no? I don't know. I'm not a horror guy. So I put that up there simply to highlight the fact that I'm not a horror film guy. So I do not have the answers to that. There are horror film aficionados and horror film producers, and probably horror films would be the easiest way to build this thing that I'm trying to build. But you know, we have to do things that are true to ourselves and the vision that we see for the world. So I don't know. I probably would imagine there are no no-nos anymore. I think we've probably crossed that line with a lot of the recent horror stuff and gore projects. So Okay, Angel, I just want to throw this up since I haven't seen your name before. Hello and welcome. I've always found it a pain to put realistic dialogue. So, in other words, writing realistic dialogue is probably a challenge. We will cover that in a dialogue-specific episode of this soon. So, First Response Media, thank you. Good content and discussion. I appreciate that. I'll just give you a little shout out for giving me a shout out. I believe, I don't want to overstep anything, but I would argue that everything on this channel is good content. I do not believe that I've put anything on this channel that could be considered to be lame or bad content, except maybe the personal vlogs when I was doing the daily prompt. But you can skip those, the black and white thumbnails, so you can easily spot them and skip them. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Skip. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry for skipping. We're running right up to the end of the line here. They're talking about how do you write optimistic, upbeat sci-fi with conflict and tension? Any ideas? Sure. Well, conflict and tension doesn't mean good guys and bad guys. It doesn't mean that there's a looming threat. It could for conflict and tension, all you need is somebody who has some sort of a goal, some sort of thing that they're wanting or trying to get. It could be something personal, it could be something physical, tangible, whatever. And that thing that they're trying to get, something is getting in their way. That doesn't have to be awful or negative or dystopian or angry. It can just be an obstacle. They have some challenge they need to overcome. So, if you think about, I'm going to date myself here, but the Dead Poet Society. You guys always want to know. I auditioned for the Dead Poet Society before Robin Williams was even going to be in it. So back when it was a De Niro project. Anyway, that's about educational. That's about poetry. That's about people and the young kids in school finding integrity and all this kind of stuff. There's no, you can have stories that you don't need dystopian elements. Sci-fi can be exactly the same way. You can have a story that is merely about some quirk of science. You do take the string theory and turn it into the source or the motivation or something behind your story. It doesn't have to be dystopian. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. That's a lame answer, a little bit short because we're coming right up on the end of it. So I'm going to skip. Sorry, guys. Let's see. Just want to skim everything. Hey, Jeff, you're overtime. Thanks. Send you an email to volunteer. Fantastic. Anyone else who wants to send an email to volunteer, please do. thescreenwritingshow@gmail.com. I am over time. It is time for me to head off. I have a hard deadline that I have to hit here. So I just want to close by saying thank you guys so much for joining me each week. This is I hope you find this beneficial. If you have any further questions or anything that comes up, feel free to rewatch this, maybe at double speed. If you have any further questions or something popped up, pop them in the comments. I don't know if you've looked through this channel, but I answer every comment on this channel. If somebody asks me a question, I often give them tips and suggestions and help within the comments itself. I will do that for you as well here for any of these, as long as they pop up on my thing. So if you haven't heard from me in a couple days, maybe call me out or something, because I definitely do want to help writers in whatever way that I can. If you are new to me and all this stuff, please consider joining me for the Weekend Screenwriting Workshop. The Weekend Screenwriting Workshop is a jam-packed 12-hour weekend workshop. It's largely talking head with some exercises at the moment. We're going to be doing some more live ones in the months ahead. Come join us for that. It's everything you need to know before you start writing your screenplay on the weekend. And then, of course, there is the fast. Where is it? Okay. Anyway, no. All right. Well, the other one's not showing up. Oh, well, never mind. Forget about the other one. Fast Screenplay. FastScreenplay.com is the complete process. Takes you through the entire thing. For anyone here who is a part of Fast Screenplay, keep moving forward. Keep taking action. I want to see you guys posting to the forums. I posted a little thing to the forums of why you should be posting to the forums, the purpose of the forums. Go read that and let that be an inspiration to actually do it. Keep moving forward, because it's only by continuing to move forward and developing and taking new action every day that this stuff becomes real. This may seem like a nice 3-hour jaunt into imagination land and wouldn't it be cool to write movies. But at the end of the day, I'm not here just to dream about writing movies and making movies. I'm here because I'm trying to build an independent film studio. I need people who actually go out and write movies. And at the end of the day, there is unlimited opportunity for us. I cannot begin to describe how much opportunity is being missed every single day that we don't have this mechanism that I'm trying to build in place. So if you don't think this is possible, if you don't think this is realistic, you're sadly mistaken. And I would encourage you to take this all seriously and actually follow through and do this stuff. It will make all the difference. You will get to your target by joining me each week right here at 2 p.m. Los Angeles time, or joining me in one of the systems, which every dollar of which goes right back into the system so that we can build the larger thing. So hopefully that makes sense. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And yes, we'll talk about your thing, Dimitri, next week. And we'll have a lot of fun with that too. So without further ado, I'm going to sign off. Thank you. Thanks once again, and we'll see you next week. Have a good week and keep on writing. Make sure to write. Get some writing done.